board meeting. Before we stand for the pledge, can we take a moment of silence for one of our employees that passed away recently, Christy McDowell, who was a guidance counselor at Northeast Intermediate School and also a former colleague of mine. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mrs. Zork.
Mr. Casey.
Present.
Mrs. Carnegie. Present. Mr. Duffy.
Present.
Ms. Gilmore. Present. Mr. Lush.
Here.
Mr. McAndrew.
Present.
Mrs. Oleski.
Present.
Mr. Schuster.
Present.
Mrs. Dixon.
Present.
I'm present.
Solicitors report. Attorney Menor.
Executive sessions were held on February 21st, 2018, and this evening to discuss personnel, potential litigation, real estate negotiations.
Thank you. Ms. Gilmore.
So there were several other executive
Yeah,
sessions.
I think there was one in March, right? Do you recall,
Yeah,
dates?
there was
28.
26th and 28th.
the 5th, the 26th, and 28th.
Yeah, that's what I
And
have.
Okay.
I know there was a discussion about the right to know in the executive session. Can we expand on that?
There was a discussion in reference to the right to know and the investigation that's ongoing with the Attorney General's office. I don't know specifically what you're asking me. If you're asking me,
Well, this one here, we talked about litigation, personnel,
right?
real
Well,
estate.
that was an investigation. That's also an exception. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Student representatives. Director Gilmartin, do you want to?
Yes, we have Mr. Nathan Barrett here with us from Kennedy Elementary and Mrs. Colleen Leonard from McNichols Plaza.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board, parents, ladies and gentlemen. We were asked to come here this evening to highlight some of the excellent things going on within the schools, within the Scranton School District. John F. Kennedy Elementary School. I want to share with you a few things that are going on. The multiculturalism within our building. We have 11 different languages spoken on a daily basis. We have students from 5 separate countries. Students as English language learners. We have 37 students, 137 bilingual, for a total of 424 students within the walls of our building. Throughout the course of the day, we try to make sure that everyone is embraced, they feel a part of the community within the Kennedy boundaries. So what we had started this year, an initiative that administration and the staff within the building began to make everyone feel welcome. So on a monthly basis, we have been hosting cultural nights. And you see here, during our Halloween parade, we started to exhibit some of the cultures that we had around the world. Our art teacher, Sarah Waslick, has become a huge part of this initiative within the walls of the building. And every single country within our building, students that are from that country, are symbolized up here within this parade. On a monthly basis, we have been working with United Neighborhood Centers, collaboration with community partners within Lackawanna County and Scranton itself. What we have been doing is working with their adult education classes, and we have members of the adult community from United Neighborhoods. They're called School of Classes, which is an adult learning class. They come to our school and present to the Kennedy community. They let us know a little bit more, an insight of what is going on within the cultures that are moving within our region. and particularly for the students within the walls of our building, so we as a staff understand more about where they're coming from and what their expectations are. And it's become a great marriage between United Neighborhood Centers and Kennedy Elementary School. We also have integrated this into our curriculum. What we do is we found out about the cultures that the adult learners have presented to us, and we have woven this into the curriculum, hitting all the standards and making sure that art is interwoven into the daily classroom lesson plans. And you'll see a picture here of one of our 5th grade teachers that is with our art teacher. So we're collaborating with the art teacher of cultural projects. They had made cultural foods, and they woven this into the 5th grade English language arts classroom. There are multiple examples of these types of collaboration within the walls of that building of staff on a daily basis. Also, what we have done this year that's something new to our school is we created something called a wraparound service, and we have been working and trying to figure out how to boost scores within the walls of our building. And we tried to figure out what a student's day looks like from start to finish. Some students get dropped off at a daycare center early in the morning. They come to our facility throughout the course of the day and then return back to the daycare facility. So what we have done is we've created a wraparound service where we're working directly with the child care providers, and they are getting exactly what we're using within the walls of that building, and they're reinforcing in the evening after kids are dismissed. They go to these child care facilities and they reinforce, do homework, and they work closely with our students. So we tried to strategically figure out how much time was in the walls of a student's day, and we're trying to, so to speak, ring it out for everything that it's worth. We also have created a pilot program. This is another partnership program with McNichols Plaza, and it's a Transforming Readers program. This is another partnership project with organizations within our county, and it's particularly with United Way of Lackawanna County, the Area of Agency on Aging, and the Voluntary Action Committee of Lackawanna County. And what we have done is we've targeted readers from kindergarten through 2nd grade, and we have created a strategic program to boost reading and literacy scores. And this is all based on volunteers that come in from those 3 agencies. They come in on a Tuesday and a Thursday in my building from 9 to 11 o'clock in the morning, and they work with every single kindergarten through 2nd grade teacher. They work 2 hours intensively with particular students, and we target any type of deficiency that they do have, and they get one-on-one work. Most of these people that are coming into the building are retired teachers, so it's an excellent resource that we have been utilizing within the walls of our building. And as you see, the goal of this, since it's an initiative just launched this year, by 2022, we want to have 90% of our 3rd grade students reading on a proficient level. Right now, it's in the 30 percentile. So those are some of the initiatives and groundbreaking things that are happening within the walls of Kennedy Elementary School. And then we have a culmination project of which all the board members, superintendent, and everyone up at these tables have received an invitation that we are going to have a fine arts walk within the walls of our building. It's going to be throughout the course of the building and out on our playground. And this is a culmination of all the cultural nights that we have hosted from September all the way until June, and every single culture that we've hosted. And this is also in collaboration with the United Neighborhood Centers of Lackawanna County. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Good evening. I'm Colleen Leonard from McNichols Plaza. Thank you for the opportunity to share a lot of the great programming that we have going on at the plaza. I took the initiative to invite some of my teachers here with me because they are really the heart and soul of these programs. So I'd like to ask Ms. Susie Schaefer and Ms. Molly Zerblist to come on up. I'm going to speak on behalf of Amanda Monturo, who spearheads our STEAM program at McNichols Plaza. So we started a STEAM program at McNichols Plaza by educating ourselves. I took Mrs. Monturo up to a training on STEM that Abington Heights School was hosting. And And from there, she was motivated to creatively start the STEAM program at McNichols Plaza. We realized the importance of computer science education, and she went out on her own and raised the funds to purchase classroom sets of Chromebooks in order to teach classes using code.org and Scratch programming. We've initiated this year with great success family involvement STEAM nights. So once a month we host a K-2 STEAM night and a 3 to 5 STEAM night, where our families are invited to come in with their children and engage in STEAM activities. Here's a few of the nights that we did host. We had our first family STEAM night was the Big Bad Wolf. Each night is completely free to all of the families that do come. Usually they consist of a story, literacy activity, a STEAM activity, a snack, and a raffle for an educational toy or program. And these are some pictures where families were challenged to build a house of a K'NEX that would withstand the Big Bad Wolf. In January, we had the pleasure of hosting Johnson College, who brought their little bits. It was very exciting to start this partnership with Johnson College. They reached out to us. One of the children in our school has a parent who works for Johnson College and was excited about our initiative and offered to bring in the Johnson College plan. And the big night we just had was exciting. Was our happy birthday party for the 18 baby chicks that we hatched in Mrs. Montero's 4th grade. We did our literacy part was reading Chicken Little, and then each family worked hard to create a casing that would prevent their egg from cracking when they were dropped from the ladder. We also have the opportunity, because of the United Way, which has provided so many great opportunities for the children of Plaza and Kennedy, to start a STEAM club with our 4th and 5th grade students after school. Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4, we host 30 students that signed up, and for the first time ever, permission slips were returned the next day. We are full. We have a waiting list of kids that want to get involved in the STEAM club, and we're able to bring 2 teams this year to the 3rd annual STEAM competition that will be at Valley View Intermediate School. So they are challenged this year with designing and building a mousetrap-powered car. So we're excited about that. Here's a few more pictures on coding and challenging that they work on in the STEAM club. And we also had Mr. Timothy Schaefer, son of Miss Susie Schaefer right here, who is a student at Embry-Riddle, and he's going to be an Air Force fighter pilot, who came in to talk to our students about training to be a fighter pilot. More pictures of our K'NEX challenges. And lastly, for my part, is we were also awarded a $5,000 grant from Lowe's that Mrs. Montero applied for to begin work on an outdoor classroom. We hope to begin that project if the weather ever breaks. And then our students can enjoy a science area outside that will include arts, literacy, all in the beautiful backyard of McNichols Plaza. I'm going to turn this over to Miss Molly Zerblus to talk to you about our early childhood nights. Good evening. My name is Molly Zerblus. I'm the preschool teacher at McNichols Plaza. We've been working on an initiative this year to engage families who have children from birth to preschool age, 5 years old, to get involved in the school and in the community. So research-based studies support the importance of family involvement early and often. So the more we can get parents and families involved in our school and working with their community and their teacher partners, the more higher attendance we will have, the better social skills, higher grades, and test scores all will follow. So in our preschool, we engage parents in the classroom. We've been doing this, I've been in the school for 6 years doing this, since the first year, and these are some of the things that we do each year. We have a lovely Lady Day and a marvelous Man Day. We use those terms to make it a little bit more lenient about who can come to them. So if a mom or a dad is unavailable due to work or other schedules or commitments, we allow an uncle to come or a female or male figure in that child's life. So those days we create projects with them, we do literacy, we play bingo that has to do with naming letters and numbers, and we use academics to involve the parents just right in our classroom during the day. We also do a butterfly launch where we raise caterpillars up to butterflies. We talk about metamorphosis and the life cycle of a butterfly, and then at the end we have a launch. And we do a teddy bear picnic where the parents can come in and they get to create a teddy bear through Build-A-Bear and have a story and a snack and spend time with their families. So the main initiative that we had been working on was to get the parents into the schools and get them started using our resources right from the start. And to do that was to just get them into our building and show them around and get them familiar with us. But some of the parents weren't able to come because of work and other commitments, so we also have some initiatives that the children can take home. So we have our families board, which is a board where we take a picture of each family and it's hung in our classroom, and it allows the child, if they're having a tough day, to look at the picture and see their mom or their dad or look at their family and be connected to them that way. We also have self-portrait sweatshirts that went, the self-portrait picture went home with the children, and they had to create a portrait with their parents. And then at the end of doing that whole program and creating a self-portrait and working on the different parts of the body, they got to take that, and we created a sweatshirt with all of their faces on it, created with their parents. We also have reading log contests monthly where they have to fill out a reading log and send it back. If they send it back, they might win a book. They get entered into a raffle. We use the Remind application and weekly newsletter just to keep the parents, the communication open, and to keep the parents involved in the class on a daily basis. This is a picture of our family board just to show what our family board looks like. So this year we started a new initiative trying to work with ages 0 to 5. We have themed family involvement nights. So far we've had construction night where the children used Legos to make Lego blueprints and building a tower and playing a tower game. We had a story and a snack similar to the STEAM nights, and we also had a raffle. We also had a bird explorer night where the Lackawanna College Environmental Education Center came and presented a free program and talked about bird eggs and nests and the life of a bird, and we discussed all of that. We had a game and we had a story similar to the construction night. And this month we are having superhero story night. The Lackawanna Children's Library is coming to do a program with us. And we also have future program sponsors lined up, Calm NEPA for meditation and mindfulness, and JCC of Scranton for Zumba, and also the Parents as Teachers program. These are some of the pictures of our parents and children getting involved together. The main thing is to get the parents involved in the learning and the engagement. We have the parents sit on the carpet with the children and work together to complete the tasks. Some of them were slightly above their ability level, just to get the parents a little bit more involved so that they couldn't just sit back and relax. They had to take an active role in their learning. Some of the ways that we're reaching these parents is to have our flyers in English and Spanish. We send them home to them to keep them updated on what events will be happening each month. We also reach out to the Head Start and Early Learning Centers in the area to give them a heads up that we will be doing this program monthly, and we've been giving them the flyers to hang up in their centers. We also have, as I said, raffle prizes, snacks and food provided, games, crafts, and interesting activities to draw the parents and the families in. And we build it up throughout the school. We talk about it quite often and get them really excited about coming. Some of the ways that I've been building positive relationships so that they will come back, so that we do have a good turnout, because we've been having great turnouts, is to send reminders of the next event. I email freebies to the parents that have provided their email address to keep them learning at home and engaging at home with their children, and just continuing to bring interesting programs to schools that they might not get anywhere else. And we just encourage the parents to come, and we thank them for all their hard work with their children and encourage them to come to the next event. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susie Schaefer. I am the the Title I reading specialist at McNichols Plaza. So, under the Title I federal program, parent involvement and family engagement is a top priority. We have two really special and exclusive grants that we work with the community. One is through the Creative and Performing Arts Academy of Northeastern Pennsylvania. 2 years ago, we were chosen by them as a partner, and they provide opportunities for our students to attend summer camp, family trips to Broadway, and they're based out of the Ritz Theater. So our students have had opportunities to attend summer camp at the Ritz, go on field trips, and they have come to the plaza and done some school performances. That grant is being renewed right now, so we're going on our third year with the Creative and Performing Arts Academy. The United Way of Lackawanna County has helped us build a family resource center in our school. It's provided us with the FAST Academy. That's our after-school program. It stands for Families in School Together. Family nights, summer program, the Transforming Leaders program that Mr. Barrett already spoke about, and the monthly food bank. This is my favorite slide. This is a picture of McNichols Plaza families on Broadway seeing Matilda. This was last fall. They foot the bill for these families to come in prior to the trip to Broadway and meet Mr. Mike Melcher and his wife Sherry. They run Kappa, and they talk to the families about the trip, tell them where to park, pay for their lunch, pay for their Broadway tickets, and afterward they get together and they have like a family night where they make a scrapbook. So these are our families. On the left, there's 4 of the Plaza kids standing in front of the Matilda sign right outside the theater, and on the right, they're all standing in Bryant Park having lunch. So it's been a real privilege to be involved with this and see these families be able to go to Broadway. On the left, these are 3 of the Plaza students last summer participating in the camp over at the Ritz Theater. And on the right, those are all McNichols Plaza students attending The Lion King on Broadway. It was amazing. The bottom left little girl broke her foot a week before, and Mr. Mike said, no problem, we put her in a wheelchair, and my son pushed her all around New York City. This is Jungle Book. This was a Kappa performance 2 years ago. One of our McNichols Plaza students, a very, very quiet little boy, he was in 4th grade at the time. His name is Christopher Rivera, very special kid. He was chosen to be Mowgli, which is the lead in Jungle Book, as a 4th grader. So because that was such a big deal, Kappa brought Jungle Book to the plaza so the whole school could see it. This winter, Kappa held a princess tea party. It was at the Ritz Theater. The tickets were $25 a person, and it was hosted, catered by Posh. They invited 10 McNichols Plaza families, free of charge, to attend this princess tea party. And the pictures speak for themselves, they're priceless. Okay, now the rest of the slides are pretty much the funding that comes through the United Way partnership. This is our Family Resource Center. Like I said, all the family involvement has kind of become my baby at school. This is a whole center in the back of our library where families can come in and borrow books, games, puzzles, building materials, all kinds of things, English and Spanish. Some of them they can keep, and some of them we ask that they return when they're finished with them and take something else. It's year-round. They can come in after school, particularly during our FAST Academy hours when teachers are working in the library, and they can borrow anything that they would like. It goes pre-K through 5th grade. These are some of our after-school activities. Like I said, FAST Academy stands for Families in School Together. It is after school. They're a little bit tired when they come to us, so we are trying really hard to make learning seem like play. This was making snow. We had 2 sets of ingredients, shaving cream and baking soda, and conditioner and baking soda, and they had to, using tally marks, vote on which one was better for building a snowman. All the way on the right, that little boy is writing his sight words on a table in the library in our homemade snow. These are simple things that they can really go home with 2 ingredients and maybe do with their family. Again, holiday decorating. None of them have ever made gingerbread before. We made our own icing. They learned how to use a pastry bag. And they had to work as a team because every table just got 1 tray. This was a trip that the United Way funded for all of the FAST Academy students to the University of Scranton for a painting class. In the hill section, the U took over, I didn't know this, an old church, and it's their art gallery. So that was a really fun day. You can see how pretty it is. Mrs. Leonard talked about STEAM. So every once in a while, when they come in after school, we can see they just need a little bit of downtime. We give them a pile of something, Connects, old school stuff, Tinker Toys, train tracks. This was Lincoln Log Day. They got a pile, not a lot of instructions, and they had to come up with something to build. Again, working as a team. We had a reading family Olympics. They had to basically take home a blank sheet of the 5 Olympic rings. They had to read 5 books, 5 different genres, write 1 sentence about each book. It was relatively simple, and color in the rings and bring it back. We had 80 families participate in the Reading Olympics. It went right along with the Olympics in South Korea in February. And on the bottom right, I don't know if you can really see, but when I gave them the medals at our school ceremony, they were biting them, just like the athletes. This is our Dr. Seuss week, kind of speaks for itself. Everybody has a Dr. Seuss week. We had a big family night with a photo booth and games and a birthday party, cupcakes, stories, activities, a 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish graphing table where families had to work together to sort the fish and make a graph. Storybook Character Day. We have Pinkalicious, aka Mrs. Leonard, Miss Frizzle, the man in the yellow hat, that's Mrs. Doherty, Snow White. And you can see with the children, we have one little boy is the mouse from If You Give a Mouse a Cookie and some Harry Potter characters. They had to come and work with their families and create something, by hand and come back to school dressed as a character. And we had really good participation. It was a fun day. This was part of Dr. Seuss Week. This was our Pajama Storytime family night. We found, and we got a lot of advice at the Title I conference in Pittsburgh over the last few years. If we keep things simple and just welcoming, that we will get more families. This was very simple, and it was one of the best nights we ever had. Just come back to school in your pajamas, listen to a bedtime story, and have cookies and milk. There was a craft to go with each book. They loved it. You can see how happy they are. And maybe my favorite night of last year, this is our Plaza Family Picnic. For a school that in the past has had trouble bringing families in and getting families involved and comfortable, we had over 300 people at our family picnic last year. We solicited donations from all over the city. Toyota of Scranton was very generous, Walmart, Sam's, Fratelli's Pizza, Brick Oven, the Montage Water Park, and families won all kinds of prizes. Families who had been to more than 5 of our, we call them passport nights. They actually have a little suitcase and they get it stamped like a frequent shopper card. They were eligible for some really big prizes like the water park passes and a tablet, but we had a bounce house. Up in the right-hand corner, you can see that teachers are serving the families. There's Mr. Festa and Mrs. Delaney and Mrs. Volpe. It was great. It was out on our playground, and it was just a really beautiful family night. Our music teacher painted faces, so that's my thing. Just trying to bring as many families in as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, guys. Just want to share a lot of good things happening in the Scranton School District.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard, and Mr. Barrett as well, for showing us all the great initiatives that are taking place in your schools. It's great to see positive things. We are now going to honor the students from the Athletics Committee with no vote at this time until after public comment.
Thank you. To members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Athletics and Stadium Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Board of School Directors is always eager to recognize student athletes who have distinguished themselves academically and athletically, and whereas Willie Evanitsky, an outstanding senior at Scranton High School, is being honored for winning the PIAA AAA State Wrestling Championship held on March 10th, 2018 at the Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. He is the first ever state wrestling champion in the history of the Scranton School District. Willie finished his high school wrestling career with 148 wins. In addition, he is a three-time Lackawanna League champion, a three-time PIAA District 2 champion, a two-time Christmas City Tournament champion held in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and champion of Escape the Rock tournament held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Furthermore, Willie was the PIAA 2017 PIAA regional runner-up and placed fifth at the 2017 PIAA AAA State Wrestling Championships. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the official congratulations of the board is extended to Willie, his parents Tom and Shina Evanitsky, his coaches, his teammates, and all of his teachers at Scranton High School. Mrs. Kagani, would you like to go down and take a picture with Willie for the school district?
Sure.
Thank you. Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Athletics and Stadium Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Board of School Directors is always eager to recognize student athletes who have distinguished themselves academically and athletically, and whereas Jacob Burgett, an outstanding senior at Scranton High School, is being honored for placing fifth at the PIAA AAA State Wrestling Championships held on March 10th, 2018 at the Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Jacob, a four-year member of the wrestling team, finished his high school wrestling career with 124 victories. In addition, he is a four-time Lackawanna League champion, champion of the Christmas City Tournament held in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, champion of the Whole Cracker Tournament held in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, a two-time PIAA District 2 champion, a 2017 PIAA regional runner-up and state qualifier, and he placed third at the 2018 regional PIAA wrestling tournament. In addition, Jacob attained Eagle, the highest rank in Boy Scouts, and was a member of Troop 42. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the official congratulations of the board is extended to Jacob, his parents John and Laura Burkett, his coaches, his teammates, and all of his teachers at Scranton High School.
I don't know about that.
Congratulations.
Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Athletics and Stadium Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas, the Board of School Directors is always eager to recognize student athletes who have distinguished themselves academically and athletically. And whereas, Jeremiah Oakes, an outstanding junior at Scranton High School, is honored for being a 2018 PIAA State Wrestling Qualifier. Jeremiah, a 3-year member of the wrestling team, currently has 94 wins in his career thus far and is a 2-time Lackawanna League champion. In addition, he is a 2018 District 2 champion and placed 3rd at the PIAA Regional Wrestling Tournament held in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Furthermore, Jeremiah is an honor roll student and is currently enrolled in Scranton High School's Honors and AP program. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the official congratulations of the board is extended to Jeremiah, his parents, Michael and Carol Oakes, his coaches, his teammates, and all of his teachers at Scranton High School.
Congratulations. Wow, I'm getting better.
Dr. Kirian did bring up in executive session that we do have a wrestling student athlete from West Scranton High School that we will be honoring next month. We just didn't want that to be forgotten. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Director Cognetti, do you have anything for the PSBA at this point?
Yes, so next Monday, April 16th, is the Pennsylvania School Board Association Advocacy Day down in Harrisburg. So any members of the board who are able to make it, I believe it's Advocacy Day for a variety of issues down in Harrisburg. I certainly will be trying to go if it's in my schedule. The schedule is first a briefing from their government affairs team, and then I think they'll detail some of the updates for the Senate Bill 2 on the vouchers, and then they'll also talk about high school graduation requirements. So it's an advocacy. I think it's a time to connect with other school board members around the state, but it's a very substantive day as well. And just to update on Senate Bill 2, in terms of advocacy, more than 165 districts have adopted resolutions opposing Senate Bill 2, which we did last month. And then 2 weeks ago, the Senate passed SB 1075, which is an amendment to the Sunshine Act to allow discussion of school safety and security plans in executive sessions. So I don't believe that is law yet, but that is going through the legislative process. So I wanted to make sure we were all aware of that.
Thank you, Director Cognay.
You know what, I could say one more thing. I think, and I could be off on this, I think maybe April 17th in Kingston, there's a PSBA, I think it's called the Legal Roundup, to go over some school law information for the board. So I think it's April 17th.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Kirian, Superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Barrett and Mrs. Leonard and your staff, thank you so much for that presentation. It's always great to see the wonderful things that are happening in our schools. We appreciate you coming tonight. I'm proud to tell all of you that all Scranton schools, including the administration building, have taken part in active shooter training, thanks to the Scranton Police Department. Although we sincerely hope that the skills we learn will never need to be utilized, the district is taking a proactive stance to increase school safety by giving our teachers and staff the knowledge they need to make life-saving decisions while under the threat of an active shooter situation. Plans to brief parents on the training are underway. Partnership expansion with Lackawanna College is also taking place. This will provide advanced opportunities for our high school students. This effort is a regional effort in which the Scranton School District will participate. To our wrestling champs, who I think left, I was on the seat of my couch the night of the match, and the board and administration were texting back and forth about all the excitement going on. So we congratulate all of them once again. Lately, we've been hearing a lot about bullying in our schools. And the Scranton School District does take a proactive approach. And I want parents to know that we do have a four-prong approach, and that is the board has developed a policy laying out the expectations of bullying in our schools. We have preventive programs in place in all of our schools. We have interventions in place, and we also monitor students who have reported bullying. Parents are involved in all the steps of these processes, and we will be also, the night of the safety training, we'll also have someone from the DA's office there to talk to parents about a program for watching your children as far as cyberbullying and electronic bullying at home and at school. So you'll get a lot of good tips that night. We don't have the date yet, so please watch our website, and we'll notify all of our principals as when that date will be, and they will notify our parents. We have been granted the 3 state days of exemption, so our last day of school right now is on June 15th, so we are going to be on time. We will have both graduations on the same night, and you will receive more information from your schools. We've already opened registration for kindergarten for next year. It opened on March 12th, so we are planning for our next school year, and there's a lot of excitement as we move forward doing that. Parents may register their child within their school or at the administration building. And to find out which schools are in your boundary, you may check our website. You go to the Parents tab, Student Registration, and you click on that link. We are happy to accept scholarships for AP exams from Julie Pollock and her company, 31 Gifts. Each of our high schools will get $330 towards scholarships for students who need some help in paying for the AP exams. Our principals are aware of this grant, and if anyone needs assistance, they can visit their school principal. Our business partners deserve a great big thank you. As you saw tonight in the presentations, they are busy working with our schools and are doing some incredible work. So we want to extend our thanks to our business partners. We also want to welcome a new partner. As you know, we have the Salvadori Science Program for our 7th grade students in all 3 of our intermediate schools. And we have a new teacher for that program who is funded by the Salvadori group. Her name is Miss Teresa Taylor. So welcome Teresa Taylor to the Scranton School District. We will have a regional college fair on April 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Scranton High School. They will be the first to host this college fair. They'll have 80 plus colleges and universities and financial aid institutions there. The event is open to all of our students in grades 8 to 11. And the students may go online to register, and after registration, they'll be given their own barcode and be able to present this barcode at tables and exhibits so that our representatives will be able to follow up with you moving forward. I have one more announcement for you, and you need to probably look for this in the newspaper, but it is quite exciting. Our Scranton veterans have started a project for the Scranton Veterans Memorial at our Scranton Memorial Stadium. The district has established a partnership with the veterans who will build a memorial at the entrance of the stadium. The veterans have been raising money to install the park and are now ready to break ground. In fact, right after the groundbreaking, the work is expected to take place in just a few weeks. You're all invited to attend, and it's Saturday, April 14th at 11 o'clock at Scranton Memorial Stadium. So we hope we'll see you all there to honor our veterans in this great project. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Kurian. At this time, we have the PFM presentation. Mr. Kaplan.
Thanks for having me, and thank you, President Dixon. Today's presentations, I think, really reminded certainly me, and I'm sure all of you, that the work we've been doing on finances is for a very specific purpose. It's for the really outstanding achievement we saw at Kennedy and McNichols Plaza, and from the student athletes and others in the district. And so a lot of times we sort of have to step back and say there's some difficult work that the board has to do and others around finance for the district, but it's really for a real reason, which is to support those kinds of important programs for kids in Scranton, to make sure that the district is really a great resource for the city. So, so with that, I'd also like to note that a lot of what I'll present tonight is sort of constructively critical, and obviously to a certain degree that's our role. That doesn't mean that we think everything is bad, and I'll mention a couple of real upside things, but I think it really puts that into perspective. Our work here, I hope, will help make the district better and make your work more productive over time. This presentation is a slightly updated version of one that we gave at a meeting with the Commonwealth's Department of Education, Governor's Office, and representatives of the district about 3 weeks ago. The district was represented by President Dixon, and Superintendent Kirian and Vice President Casey and Attorney Medora were on the phone, able to participate on the phone. So they were the district reps, and I was there with another member of my team, and the other participants were state officials, as mentioned, as well as Senator Blake and Representative Flynn. So it was a good opportunity for people to talk broadly about some of the issues facing the district, especially on the financial side, and to have the primary representatives for on the funding side and the regulatory oversight side to be able to hear from the district and hear what particularly the president and the superintendent had to say. So our presentation was towards the end as a kind of additional commentary. As you know, we've been working with the district for almost a year now, and originally we're working under a grant from the federal government and the state to do a fiscal kind of status report. And we worked through that and made that presentation, as you recall, for folks who were on the board then, back in September. Since then, we've been working in a more specific series of tasks to try to improve particular areas within the district and build on some of the recommendations we made in some of the areas that you wanted to focus on. So I'll be talking a little bit about our review of the business office, human resources. We took a look at general liability and workers' comp insurance coverage, which is one of the areas I think that the district's on very solid footing. We looked a little bit. We obviously did a projection of the budget based on how it was initially passed in December, and I'll come back to that at the end. We have done some preliminary work on tax collection and would like to do some more on that in the next several weeks and get back to you about some suggestions in that area. And then, of course, we're working with PDE on special education staffing and professional development. Their staff from Harrisburg is really the lead on that. We're also working on some ongoing projects. We are very, very excited about the work that President Dixon has done with PSBA to have them come in next week and do the training. I think that's a good way to go, and will be very beneficial to the board and allow you to identify some issues that you really want to focus on. And you'll see I have a couple of comments about that in this presentation. Communications, particularly internal and external, and how we communicate key issues. And then one area we've identified but have not gotten a chance to start on, but will in the next couple of weeks, is trying to focus a little bit on overall school building configuration and capital conditions, and particularly build on some of the preliminary work the staff has done to help put together a more comprehensive capital plan for the next couple of years and start understanding for our financial projection purposes what things may need to be addressed, both kind of large capital and smaller rehab projects and funding going forward, so that we don't end up with ultimately a multi-year budget projection that we then say, oops, what about all these investments we need to make to keep our buildings running and teachers and kids safe. So that's the overview of where we are.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
With that the comprehensive capital improvement plan, do you know the timeline on that one?
We're hoping, I talked to the superintendent just briefly about that today, and we're hoping to have some resources from our group available in the next few weeks to start on that. Some of you met Mr. Breton, who's an experienced business administrator, who also worked extensively with a gentleman named Phil Mowry, who has been a building head for various school districts around Pennsylvania, and also consults extensively around the state and has worked with us with other districts. And there are a couple other people on our team, so we're hoping to do that really as soon as possible.
Okay, because we have a capital improvements project we're working on right now, so it'd be great to get your input on that.
Great, good.
Thank you.
So the key findings we presented to the group in Harrisburg, and again, as I'm saying, they're hopefully constructively critical comments, we're really focused on systemic things we thought we needed to get at. And you'll see on the next couple of pages, there are a number of areas where the district is already working on these things. Our first finding was that the district is very thin in the management level, particularly upper and middle management staffing, and you'll see this plays out in a couple other comments that I make. We've obviously focused very heavily on finance and human resources, where you have very talented staff, but not particularly very many of them for a district of your size. So to some degree, your ability to execute on things you need to do has to be prioritized because of the number of things that you can ask people to do at any given time. So that's an area we have some thoughts on. We found that there were a lot of basic systems that Scranton does not have, that a district of its size might be expected to. And you'll see in a moment, I think we've begun with you fairly aggressively addressing that. But the staff is very anxious to learn more and do more. They need some support to do that, and we have some ideas about how to do that going forward. We found that the board and the solicitor are more involved in the day-to-day operations of the district, and this is a historic comment, not necessarily just a specific comment about right now, but a historic comment that we found that a level is somewhat unusual compared to other districts, and you'll see we have some suggestions about having the superintendent and the senior staff lead on a variety of different issues. Same thing for some of the vendor relationships, which are very long-standing, and we think that a kind of scheduled work through of some of your contracts going forward would be very helpful. And obviously, there's some items like that already on the agenda for tonight, and I'll come back to that as well. We think that working through some of the major contracts and restructuring them and bidding them out over time would be very helpful. We mentioned the capital program briefly. We think purchasing and IT infrastructure are other areas we'd like to visit in more detail kind of going forward. We think that some additional support and direction could be helpful. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about special education, and you have looked at that a bit in more detail previously. So to get into the specific things we suggested and are working on with you now, we think that having reviewed kind of the structure and the resources you have now, we think that Mr. Laffey has done a really nice job as the acting assistant business manager and is perfectly capable of being the business manager for the district. We recommend at this time that you put him into that role. Don't appoint a CFO right now, but really use those resources elsewhere. I think that's certainly from talking to you and others around the district, I think that's a widely held view, and I think he should be commended for his hard work, especially in the last 6 or 8 months. We've worked with him and Mr. Gretton to find ways to enhance the use of the Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit Finance program that you already have. So the real issue there is this is a great example of a tool that we think you could expand your use of. The staff is kind of excited to do that. You'll be able to have more data more quickly and take some of the routine work off people so that you can do more creative and dynamic analysis. Mr. Gretton arranged for training from CSIU already. They've come to the district as part of their package for the district, and then to the extent that it's needed, there may be specific modules that people may need to travel out there to do, and that could be a long day trip, probably in most cases. So we're hopeful that will work well, and you'll see it also affects the HR area. We think there's some ability to restructure positions and more clearly designate specific people for leads, for example, in procurement or other areas within the office, and to really give them not only the lead position but also the training to do that over time and take your very capable staff and kind of upgrade their skills. So Mr. Gretton will be working on that, and then, as I mentioned, also on purchasing as it goes forward. On transportation, you received a lengthy presentation from our friend Mr. Schock quite recently. We like working with him because he's so knowledgeable nationally about this issue, but also has worked extensively in Pennsylvania. We strongly suggest that the RFPs that are on your agenda tonight be approved, and that you really start that process by optimizing the system you have. You're obviously in a couple of very complicated contracts, and you have there have been a lot of issues around how those should work and whether they would work and what you might do with them in the short term. We think that the first thing you need to do is to get professional outside help to build on what Bob Schock did and do a formal routing system, determine how that might work, and have staff internally trained on the software so that over time you can refine that system. That's not a one and done process. As all of you know, from even the stories we heard today, people move from place to place. You have populations change. Kids move from school to school and in and out of schools during the year, so your bus numbers are going to change, and you're going to need to be flexible about that. For starters, we think that working on these, whether you select one vendor or two or how you do it, you should be able to improve your current system and learn enough about it that you'll be able to develop a much more pointed and effective RFP when you are ready to rebid your services. And we will continue to work with you on getting the RFP out. We can help with the interviewing of obviously you guys get to make the selection, but we can support that work. And we think that there are decent savings, well into the six figures to be had just by doing this rerouting in the short term, and then that will allow you to optimize your system for larger savings in the future.
Dean, I have a quick question. So I just want to go back just a second to CSIU. Are you referring to the funding part of it, or where there's layers of approval for purchase orders? That component, the purchasing component, or?
Well, I think we really want to explore all of that. So you'll see in HR, we'd like to.
I'm familiar with that. Also, there's a gradebook component for teachers. It's excellent.
Right. So I think as people get more familiar with it and are comfortable with it, it can expand into all of its capacity. I think that's, you have an existing tool that is relatively widely used. You can get peer education from nearby school districts that use it, and I think that's a good suggestion. On the copiers, I think that's another area of sort of relatively low-hanging fruit, where even though you have a copier contract that's expiring relatively soon, and we've seen a lot of districts really gain significant savings from this area. You'd think it was kind of boring and not really a place to save money, but the two elements that we find are critical are both determining how your system should work. So I think this is an area where all of us think we're experts because we've all used a copy machine. In fact, there are actually our professionals who figure out how many copy machines should be in a school. What do you need? How does your academic program work with materials you copy? Can there be a central copy area? And if so, what should it produce and what should be local? Do you really need 4 machines in that school because it's big, or is there a limited, is there a way to have certain people move around and use 2? And then deal with maintenance, which is the biggest issue a lot of times in schools. The copiers will tend to break and be out of service for lengthy periods of time. We found that getting professional advice on this is a relatively small upfront investment to optimize the system and, most importantly, write your RFP. Again, something we don't think of, but I always refer to this as an RFP that Xerox is afraid of, that they know has been written by a professional, understands school copying, and will be looking for certain milestones and costs that are relevant to the region you're in. So that's one that we think there are, I think, 2 proposals before the district on this, and we don't have any preference as to which you select, although we have some suggestions about what criteria you might use to select. But we think that's another area to go forward, and we think you can save some money in the short term. And this area, like transportation, we think is important to be able, as we enter into dialogue going forward with kind of continuing the conversation that started in Harrisburg with the legislature and with the department about what the district is doing on its own behalf. You've passed a tough budget. You have a lot of initiatives. It's helpful to be able, as the budget process kicks into full steam in Harrisburg in the next 2 months, to be able to say, here's some things we've done. So I think that would be very helpful to us. On the human resources side, I think our feeling is similar, that there are a lot of processes going on with paper that can ultimately be, you can use existing CSIU modules to do. We obviously would like to make sure that your records aren't only in one place on paper over time, particularly those related to personnel and retirees where you're making payments based on those. We found a lot of receptivity in HR to doing that. We also think that over time, as part of those issues around both the business office and other places, it would be helpful to use, Mr. Gretton certainly can help, and also possibly PSBA or somebody else. There's several people who do this who can help you with job descriptions to tighten those up and also recognize the kind of training and skills that your employees would get as you upgrade. There's a fair amount of training that the district has generally not been able to provide for a variety of reasons that we think would be helpful, and we've listed some here. We also think that as more time becomes available because of less process-based systems, you should be able to re-knit some of the relationship between HR and business that will work well. And then we suggested to them that sort of as I was mentioning a minute ago, that putting some of these things together would be a good way for elected representatives to provide evidence that the district is making progress and is worthy of assistance. So that's an area we'll leave to you to discuss with the senator and the representative, but I think that's critical going forward. The remainder of this presentation, I think most of you have seen before. We did not update the numbers that are on the last page or the assumptions. from what you saw earlier. And the reason for that, I think, ties back to what I said earlier, is right now we've asked Mr. Laffey to take on a bunch of projects in the business office, and he's doing those with great energy. And we felt that right now, if you add in the borrowing that you approved and hopefully will occur in the coming weeks, and you a couple of other minor adjustments, the only real difference in these projections would be that the first year would be balanced. There'd be a little bit of change in the out years. So we have a to-do item with Mr. Laffey as we work through the rest of the school year to start building in some actuals and update these numbers a little. We don't think they'll be significantly different. So for now, and in the presentation, we hadn't changed the budget yet. And since we did that presentation, we thought there were some other priorities. So we will update those numbers, but probably not immediately, depending on what the other priorities are. So that's a good summary of what we went through, and I'm happy to answer questions or comments or other.
I have a question, Mr.
Sure.
Kaplan. If you could expand, we had a conversation at that meeting as well about the bidding and the timeline and all the vendors that we had, about the minimal staff that we had at the central office not being able to handle. Could you explain to the board what you
Sure.
told us?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you have embarked on kind of considering rebidding a large number of contracts. And I think that as a goal for the board, that's a good idea. We think that you probably should have a list of your major contracts and minor contracts for that matter. Have a schedule for them over time that you're going to revisit them on a regular basis. And sometimes you may get to one and say, we're okay with that. One that I know Mr. Gretton looked at, and I told the superintendent today I'd have him get back to her because I'm not as familiar with it. But I know that, for example, he looked at your E-rate contract and thought that even though it's of somewhat long-standing, that your provider is a well-known and respected in the state, and the pricing is similar to other districts. So, for example, that might be one that you might not undertake right away for the interest of doing something you do need to do. So, obviously, I'd mentioned I think the transportation is a real priority. I think that the copying is a priority. I would suggest that you take work with Mr. Laffey and the Budget and Finance Committee to identify kind of a reasonable amount that he can take on given his other duties, but then really make a point of doing that over time. And I don't have a good sense of what that number would be, but you want to have a nice mix of also large contracts and smaller contracts so that both you can have other staff assist. So if you're doing things that are more operationally oriented around supplies that are used in certain schools or by the maintenance department, you can use them to help leverage that and do a little bit more.
Nothing yet. I mean, I do have just a question, and it's about the actual resolution in draft form. Other than that, I have nothing from this.
So where are we still working, well, Mr. Laffey, are we still working on a bid timeline?
Yes, we are. We've taken the proposed resolution that was sent to us, I think, sometime near the end of March, and I've been putting together some dates and expected areas of the year when it would fit our schedule the most. And speaking with Dr. Curie, we'd be bringing that to our senior executive team because there's many areas that affect many departments, and we're hoping to speak to it at the next Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
Thank
Are
you.
we all right with that, Ms. Cochran?
Yeah, I think that, I think it was the end of February that we started talking about this. I had a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on February 21st. And, we had used, to Mr. Kaplan's point about having a list of minor and major contracts. Mr. Laffey provided us with a very extensive list that in, I think, even late January that we worked on. And so the list of services that we have in this draft resolution, a lot of them are ongoing, and they speak to, I believe it's bullet point 4 on PFM's presentation, page 3. The district relies heavily on long-term recurring vendor relationships, resulting in inefficiency and high relative costs. The concentration on these was less so the copiers, for example, are not on here. What's on here are these relationships that the district has had since going back before even I was born, I think in some cases, where it was maybe never bid or just this recurring contract. And not even a contract, but just an ongoing thing that's never been visited. So I think that, this list that I started with at 20, certainly expected for that to come down and for, the administration and in concert with PFM to look and see. E-rate sounds like workers' comp and insurance maybe seem to be going well. So if we feel like that, then that's not urgent. But what we've found, for example, with the financial advisor situation, we do not have an agreement with that person, despite what I was told in January by the administration. So we have a lot of things that we actually need to do and will not do so without the administration confirming that that's okay. But I do think that we need to continue to push forward. We have things we have already tabled, like the auditing firm. That's something that we need to look at, not because there's any problem with the auditing firm, just we haven't bid it in a long time. I would also say, to Mr. Kaplan's point, looking at evaluation of tax collection structure and staffing, the Scranton tax office, single tax office is a very complicated entity. It's probably, with PFM looking at it, with shared services, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on that, but those might be things that we need to look at. I mean, we might need to look at our current contracts for BPM tax collection. We might need to look at, I believe the sale of delinquent taxes are, this is the last tax year that we have a contract with them. So I think that there are some things that are going to come up anyway, but absolutely will not do anything that the administration, Mr. Laffey, Dr. Carey and Mr. Laffey especially, isn't comfortable with in terms of timing and capacity.
I appreciate that, Ms. Cognetti, because some of the things that we do need to bid affect the opening of school. And so we'd like to get those under our belt as the smaller ones that Dean referred to, so that we'll be ready for the beginning of the school year. And then as we go along, add others to the list. I really would appreciate input from our staff, because in their offices, many of them work with these vendors, and so we're going to do that tomorrow at our executive cabinet meeting, and hopefully be prepared for when the Budget and Finance Committee comes up, and I'm expecting that should be very soon.
Yes, it will be. And just to clarify, it sounds like we're starting to put vendor and services in the same. This is the list I have in front of me. I'll read: auditing firm, BPM taxes, financial advisor, sale of delinquent taxes, district physician, solicitor services, architect, engineer, energy control, map and mop cleaning. Those two might be things that impact opening a school, but healthcare consultant, labor counsel, special education, legal counsel, these aren't things that are impacting physically opening the doors to the schools in the way that I think sometimes we maybe mischaracterize.
And I think that, to Dean's point, was we need to pace ourselves.
And also focus on the things that are most likely to provide you with some financial results in the short term.
Right,
So,
the highest
you
impact.
have healthcare costs are a big issue. We talk about transportation. So I haven't internalized that whole list, but obviously there's some things on there that are probably more financially important to you in the short term.
I think I provided that list to you, so you'd have
I
the
just haven't memorized
opportunity
it.
to look it over and help us out some on that. We'd appreciate it.
So are we at a place where we're starting to get some of these things onto a list to begin bidding out these services? I mean, over the summer months?
Transportation, copier,
Yeah,
some things that we're going to start
I
school
mean,
with.
transportation, we've tried to push it through to the procurement office of the Attorney General to look and see if we have a contract. So at that point, if it's deemed that we don't have a contract, then that can be put out, but if not.
I believe, Mr. Schuster, we're going to the courts because I don't feel comfortable getting an answer from them, putting it out
But
to
at that
bid.
point, this is 2022, so I mean, that's something that it is off in the distance, so. I mean, the directive coming out of the Budget and Finance Committee was to get something together. I mean, that's going back as far as February 21st.
And
That is
we're
correct.
working on that.
The resolution that refers to, again, I've started putting in some timelines. I do want to review that with other members of our cabinet to make sure that doesn't impact what time works best for them. As Dr. Curie noted, we will speak about that tomorrow, hopefully update the next budget and finance committee.
So you're saying the draft in front of me from March 12th By next work session, we'll have a timeline for everybody on there? No. Why not?
Well, we'll have, yeah,
There's
but
people out
there
there
are
that
other
are-
things too, Mr.
There's people out there
McAndrew.
longer than me haven't been put out to bid.
Yeah. Well,
After
well,
one every 4 years, these people just stay here.
well,
I
what
think we need to put a timeline on everybody.
The other thing is it's only.
We agreed to a timeline on everybody on this sheet. That's what I thought. Now we're gonna piecemeal it, and that's what I was afraid of.
Well, that's not the approach that I was taking.
I'm not saying you are. It just
I
fits
certainly
out.
was also informed that PFM would be possibly making some recommendations, as they mentioned. The vendor that we use for E-rate is a well-recognized one. So that may be a recommendation, is that we don't prioritize that just yet based on the pricing that we currently have and focus on another area. So I think we wanted to come to you, not piecemeal, and certainly complete this entire list as it's been requested.
I'd say something like that, it has an end date on it with the E-rate, or is that's an ongoing service?
It's been an ongoing service. We apply for our E-rate reimbursement every year with the assistance of this consultant.
But I do think that the directive here was to get somewhat of a timeline, whether that timeline be out a year or whatever, it was to get a timeline together.
And that's what will be
Yeah,
presented.
by the time we're finished, you will have that.
Mr. Kaplan, or would it be ever whomever you, somebody on your team, or Mr. Gretton, when working with the senior staff, if that would be coming tomorrow or in the coming days or weeks, I hope not weeks, but actually days, will you be working on just looking at and talking about continuity? Because I know you did talk about opening of the school doors and then the continuity with the lack of senior staff in some areas where they work day to day. I get that, but will you be working with them on that?
Yeah, and I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive. I mean, I think obviously we need to be cognizant of kind of keeping the train rolling on the tracks, and also to some degree trying to see where we can kind of change the direction and or try new things. So I think critical of that is getting a solid list from the staff of what they think they can do, being constructively critical of that. We may want to add some things, drop some things. I may or may not be right about the E-rate thing. We'll talk to Mr. Gretton and see. But then being mindful, and some of those may be, as I think the superintendent suggested, there may be standard things that you actually have been bidding every year that we want to make sure are on that list, so that we know, hey, that's something the staff has to spend time on, and it's critical to make sure we have school day opening supplies. Does that have to be in by June 1st for August, so whatever those things are.
Okay. And Solicitor Menor, have we filed that claim with the courts?
We've done a draft, but we haven't filed it yet.
Okay. The only reason I say that is I'd rather it go to the courts, is so that the fact that we don't jump the gun. And be able to
So
get,
at this
yeah.
point in time, I mean, I was gonna save that for new business, but
Okay.
since we're talking about it now.
I'm
might
sorry,
as well.
could we let Mr. Kaplan finish and then we'll move on to that topic? I don't think it's fair
I'm finished.
to, you're finished.
That's
But
the
there
only
might be more
reason.
questions, there might be more questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to torture you standing up there.
Just brought it up because.
So I guess with that one, when did we make a decision it was going to the courts?
Well, nobody
I
had
mean, it
any
was suggested,
objections. Nobody, I assume that, just like we didn't decide yes or no to send it to the Attorney General's, there was no objections to that. I just thought, instead of handing it to one step on the run, let's go to the end of the ladder. So we're not jumping the gun and, say that we do get an opinion that says that we don't have a contract, and it goes to the courts, and in the meantime, we jump the gun and put it out to bid, and it goes to the courts, and we're determined that we do have a contract. I don't want to continue to pay on that contract and legal repercussions financially. So why don't we just get it all out of the way and go to the court system on step one?
I think with that, can you give us an explanation or
Sure,
how that works?
declaratory judgment action. I mean, the only opinion that really counts is the opinion of the court. So if you file a declaratory judgment action and we ask the court for an interpretation of whether or not it's a valid contract, then, the court gives us an answer, and that's finality.
But what is the process?
You have to file, it's a complaint, it's a complaint with declaratory judgment. And my guess is that, the facts are pretty much undisputed. And you would submit evidence and file a brief, have oral argument, and get a decision. You probably could get an expedited briefing schedule. I think, the evidence is mainly a resolution and the attachments, and the historical resolution and attachments, and the existing contract that goes back several years So,
who would argue each side?
well, I would argue our side on behalf of the district, and the Naples Transportation would argue their side.
And that would go on
I'm sorry, who
in front of a
did
panel
you
of
say?
judges?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
So that would go into a panel of judges?
It would probably go to one judge. My guess is it would be a visiting judge.
Okay.
Attorney
I'm not certain of
Menor.
that.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I'm sorry. We were talking at the same time. What's normally the timeline on something like that?
I think you could have an answer in 3 or 4 months.
Okay, I have a comment. First, if you control the input of the process, you can influence the outcome. The credibility of this board and the reliability of these processes require that those spearheading any examination or any process, in this case we learned that you're working on a declaratory judgment on behalf of the school board, where you say the facts are undisputed. I obviously dispute that. Mr. Menor, please. For the person who was close to the facts with these contracts since 2012, having you spearhead the examination, having you spearhead a declaratory judgment is an absolute conflict.
I have no problem. I have no problem. I was asked to do it.
You were asked to do it by Mr. Casey, but not the rest of this board.
Well,
I had no idea that this was moving forward, and for all of the communications that we have, it's shocking to me that that didn't get
You talked about proceeding on a
revealed.
parallel track, but if the board wants to recommend outside counsel to file it, that's
There's
fine.
absolutely no way that you should continue to be the counsel on a
That's fine.
transportation contract or anything else that has been deemed controversial.
Not at all.
Excuse me, because my name was brought into this, I want to make it clear that I didn't ask Mr. or Solicitor Menor to do that on behalf of us, to spearhead the actual conversation. One way or another, this is heading to court if it gets overturned in the Attorney General's. So it's going to end up there no matter what, if our positions are overturned. So there's, to suggest, I don't know if you're doing that, and I don't want to put that language into your mouth, but to suggest that I asked Solicitor Menor to do that to spearhead the direction with the argument, I would object to that.
Spearheading the process is I'm referring to the solicitor who's been close to these contracts and these negotiations with the transportation in the past. I was not aware of moving forward with a declaratory judgment. I thought we had discussed that, but we would continue to discuss it. I didn't know that was moving forward. I am the budget chair and the second chair on transportations. Second now again, I think. I was first for a week there, but now I'm second again. And I will just contact the Attorney General's procurement office myself and start to see what can happen there. So that's different. That's a separate. That can be a separate track, but we've got to figure this out, and we've got to do it with people who have not been close to these situations prior to.
I don't have a problem. As I said, I don't have a problem with it. If you as a board, choose to use other counsel, I can give you advice and suggest some names. If you want to go with those, you can. If you want to go with some other ones, that's fine. But that's fine by me.
Any more questions for Dean?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
So in an effort for clarification, we are going to proceed forward in both paths.
We need to discuss who our legal counsel will be, and then I think we need to look at options, in my view. We need to decide, we need an attorney to submit a declaratory judgment. We need an attorney. I firmly believe, as I just said, we should sort out a new counsel for this particular situation. So we need to do that as a board before.
I agree with that, so we're going to move forward in both directions.
So if we were...
I think that conversation is ongoing.
As it is ongoing, if we're going to do that, we need to bid out that service. And as none of us here are attorneys, I didn't understand the fact that if Mr. Menor or Solicitor Menor were to petition the courts for that he would also be the de facto representative. I did not understand that, as none of us have gone to law school here. That's just where I stand. I'm sorry if that drew any confusion.
As I said, Director Cognetti, if you'd like, I could suggest some names. We've used Sweet Stevens in the past. Or as I said, also, the board can pick whoever they want.
Is that what you have?
Yeah, Mr. Casey, we're having a hard time hearing over here.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time
What
too.
I need clarity
Carol.
on is the board
Carol hear?
going to bid out the services of
I'm here.
an attorney to take this forward? And if so, do we, to avoid any conflict of interest with anyone on the board, do we, at our next meeting, have a resolution to request that we go out to bid and then put a bid, an RFP out there with the exact specs of what this attorney is expected to do, so that we don't go ahead and appoint someone and then they think they work for the district forever and ever. I think clarity is important here.
So
So I need direction from the board as to how you would like to proceed.
So with that realm, it would be getting the declaratory judgment. We would need to go out to bid for lawyer services.
Yeah.
If we approach the Auditor General in their procurement department, would that cost money?
No, that won't, no. I absolutely, if we get to a point where we need to hire legal counsel and move forward on one or both tracks, we will make sure that we do that by vote through resolution. I don't think we're there yet. I think that we have some digging to do on what the options could look like.
Can I ask a question? Returning to Norm, since you did go to law school, can you give us a lesson on what the procurement office does?
Well, the Department of General Services generally would look at something like this, I think, and determine whether or not there's a contract. The Attorney General's office might, if they were asked for an advisory opinion from the governor's office, and they may give us an advisory opinion based upon the information that's given. I think everybody knows what my opinion is. And it's based upon a number of factors. And what happened in 2016 wasn't a heck of a lot different than what happened in 12, 9, and 6. It was pretty much the same way. So there's a whole bunch of issues. In my opinion, and I've said this in the past, offer, acceptance, consideration, contract. And you also have a ratification issue because of the behavior over those many, many years. But, you can have the Attorney General's office or the Department of General Services, if they're willing to look at it and give us an opinion, but it's simply that, it's an opinion. And you could end up in a lot of litigation, potentially with 2 busing contracts. So my advice would be that the idea of a declaratory judgment action is not a bad idea. I don't have a problem, and I don't care who does it.
But the opinion from the procurement office, is that binding?
No, it's not. It's just the beginning. So this is
The only thing that would be binding is a court opinion.
right. This
It
is
wasn't
just
appealed.
a beginning of how we. To me, the way to look at this is, again, we talk about the roadmap from the Auditor General, who for many years, and I know the Scranton Federation of Teachers was looking at these contracts, still looks at these contracts over and over again in detail. It's not out of left field that we have questions. In my experience, at the federal level, and then with ex-colleagues of mine around the country in different government agencies, the procurement general services, whatever they call it in Pennsylvania, they could help at least guide us to the right, maybe private attorneys to hire or private opinions to get. I think that we are at the beginning of a process, certainly not the middle or the end, but I think it's a very important one.
Do we know what the timeline would be on that? Director Cognetti?
I don't know. I mean,
And I will say this, being that it's only an opinion in binding, it might be a good option to get the free opinion first before we bid out for legal services.
right.
That was my point.
That's fine by me. I was just suggesting it as a potential solution that saves us a lot of time. interested one way or another. We don't spend any more.
So that would have to be carried forward to that office. Is the board's...
I mean, that's just the beginning. To me, that's a good first step, is to
Right.
go to the state attorney that
I'm
would.
talking process now. If that's the first step, it has to be carried to that step.
I will do that.
So, does our board want our solicitor to carry it to that step? Or are you saying we'll hire an attorney to take it to that step?
I'm a private citizen, and especially as a public official on this board, I do not think that they would hang up on me if I called and asked to speak with somebody or set up a phone call with them. If the board would like, a few of us could be on the phone call. I could let you know when it happens, and we could make sure that we don't have a quorum and we get the advice together. We can run that process as a board, but you don't have to be an attorney to ask a question of the Attorney General's office.
Will they give a written opinion?
I think we should have the superintendent make the phone call.
Why is that?
Actually, that's
It's already busy
most
enough.
appropriate based on what you heard from PFM about micromanagement.
That we're not acting.
Yep.
Okay,
And I would be
because-
happy to
Mr.
have
Lesh.
a board member,
Excuse me, I'm talking.
I would be happy to have a board member with me when we actually do that.
Why the superintendent?
We could also move it to a transportation committee meeting and have this discussion. We could also move it to a transportation committee meeting, have the discussion there before we move forward.
He's the head of the district.
I'd like to see a written opinion too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
As
agree.
well, put it in writing.
I would too, of course, but again, this is the beginning of a process. Mr. Lesh, you did not come to the Transportation Committee meeting where we discussed this 2 weeks ago. I ran that meeting instead of you because you had resigned from this board.
All right, let's keep going.
Is that not true? I'm not sure. You weren't here for the conversation, so I'm not sure that you're the best person to hang on.
You know what? That's right.
All right, we're gonna move this to a transportation committee meeting?
We can.
Would you like to move it to a transportation committee meeting?
I don't think we need to. I think the superintendent should carry the ball.
This is a board decision.
This isn't the audience's decision, okay? I mean, Mrs. Gagnetti just wants to sit here and downgrade me, that's fine.
That's not true.
Well,
I had to preside over that meeting because you resigned 3 hours prior.
Mrs. Dixon.
I do think, though, and I'm not sure if we didn't hear, I do think Dr. Carrion offered to make the call with a board member.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I have no problem with that.
It seems like a happy medium to me.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Dr.
I'm
Carey,
not
make
okay
the
with
phone
that.
call with the board
You're
member
not
present
making
or
the president.
two?
Or two.
Or two, or three. Yeah.
I'll be happy to do that.
That's true.
So I'm taking that as a directive, Mrs. Dixon.
As long as this is the consensus of the board, as long as we have 2 or 3 members present, we are okay with that?
Do we want further conversation or where are we at?
We could start the process. Director Cognetti
Right
said
now, we
that's
have
the
the
start of the
opportunity to-
It's
process.
a startup process. I'll refer to my opening statement on this topic. I don't think anyone who's been close to the facts on these transportation contracts should be involved in how we can. I know that you weren't involved in them, but I think we
Don't you
need
know she
a.
needs to micromanage everything here?
So what I would
She
like to
just-
see is that as the superintendent of the school district, along with fellow board members, that we make the call together and request in writing the answers so that we could bring it back to the entire board.
The rest of the board would like that to happen. I just want to firmly state that I do not agree that that's the best case path forward.
That's fine, but I really would like to do my job.
I don't see how that is your job.
That's because you don't know the role of the
You can
superintendent.
call me disrespectful all you
Very
want, Mr. Lesh. I am trying to.
I think we're gonna have a recess.
This
We're gonna go
public
with that.
forum. How terrible.
We're not gonna do this on the floor.
said that?
Can we move forward?
Who's I?
We're going to recess now. Please, before we move forward, I'm going to ask that everyone on this stage keeps a decorum of respect, not calling names, every director. And our superintendent is the one that's in charge of our school, and we have to keep a respect factor on this stage. We expect it from our audience, and I wouldn't expect anything less from our board. At this time, we're going to start the public comment. During this time, public comments are welcome on the agenda and non-agenda items. The board will listen and not respond to speakers. The public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Each person has one opportunity at the microphone regardless of the minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The board secretary will time the comments and alert the chair when time has expired. The board will not allow derogatory comments or calling of employee names. And again, we are not going to answer any questions. The first speaker is Kevin Kays.
Good evening, directors, Dr. Curie. I want to thank you for some great discussion in the last few minutes. Gives me some hope. And I also want to thank you for, it looks like you're about to vote on a new calendar for next year, starting earlier, which gives us a few more instructional days to get kids prepared for AP exams, which come in early May. It's always nice to have some extra instructional days. I've been part of a Community Connections to the Watershed student forum program for a number of years, I guess about 10 years or so, and in partnership with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and Lackawanna River Now Conservation Association and a few other entities, Lackawanna Heritage Valley Authority. We've had some great experiences with the students from Scranton High, visits to various sites in the area, the water treatment plant at Lake Scranton, Scranton Sewer Authority, that's always a favorite with the clothespins over their noses, the wind turbines up in Waymart, various places doing chemical analysis of river waters and biological indexing of some of the macroinvertebrates, et cetera. Great experiences. And then, as part of that program, the students are asked to do various projects. We've done cleanups along Leggett's Creek, a mile and a quarter of Leggett's Creek a few years in a row, in cooperation with the Department of Public Works here in Scranton, cleaned up about a mile and a quarter of riparian buffer zone along the creek there. We've built a rain garden with grant money from various community organizations and businesses. We've had solar panels installed on the roof at Scranton High, again with grant monies, et cetera. A couple of years ago, I and the students, at their impetus, asked if we could get a wind turbine installed at Scranton High campus. And so I looked into it and contacted Susan Stewart, who's an aerospace engineer at Penn State University at the main campus, who was in charge of PA Wind for Schools. And she came and walked with me one cold January when both our feet were about to fall off, toes frozen, walked around the campus looking at data from the National Weather Service and wind flow charts, et cetera, talking with our coaches who know that wind comes over that West Mountain and funnels through that stadium, looking at our flag, which is 80 flags, American flags, 80% of the time are flying straight out. We have the wind, and her recommendations was a Zeres 3.7 Skystream wind turbine. It's a 2.4 kilowatt capacity. We have raised funds in various ways. The Lackawanna Heritage Valley Authority grant, PPL bought in, which is a good thing because we have to connect into their system. K&T Networks, the Penny's Federal Credit Union. We've got, I was able to get drawings, the engineer's drawings, electrical engineer's drawings for the electrical hookup from what one of the architects in the area tells me was the best electrical engineer in the area. A structural drawing, the foundation drawing from a structural engineer, David Johns, and all of that donated. The utilities have signed off on the site. They have seen...
All right, your time is up, Mr. Case. You can finish your sentence.
Okay. We are looking for, I asked Ms. Ward to pass out a resolution. One of the grants I'm seeking is from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation, of Economic and Community Development. They require that the board pass a resolution just in support of seeking the grant. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for any money from you. I was promised a lot of money some years ago from the board. Just looking for that, if you would consider that, it's before you. The first half of it is the resolution, the second half is the witness by our superintendent.
We did get it, Mr.
Okay,
Case, and we're going to bring it to committee. We'll discuss it.
Okay.
And from there, we could get it onto the next agenda.
Okay, I appreciate
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Mr. Case, just for information, what will the 10,000 be going towards? I'm in full support of this. I thank you for it, but what?
Sure. The project will cost anywhere from $25,000 to $28,000, depending on how much more I can get donated. When the new building at the University of Scranton was being built, they were pouring concrete, and they said if we did the excavation, they said we have concrete trucks going by there every day, we'll be happy to donate the concrete they come and pour. So, depending on how much more we could get donated, it would be somewhere between $25,000 and $28,000.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have about $10,000, I should have said, we have about $10,000 raised so far. Kids stood out coin drops in January, they have bake sales, we're selling t-shirts, Renewable Energy in Scranton High, I'm a big fan. So we have about 10,000. The department will match that 10,000 that we've raised so far if they give us the grant.
Thank you, Mr. Case.
Mr. Case. Am I correct that if we put a wind turbine in, can that supplement any electrical?
Yes, the electrical drawing will shows a feed directly, and it will supplement our electrical supply directly there. There won't be any buyback because we're using far more electricity than the wind turbine could provide, but it would supplement, yes. So there would be some cost savings there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matt Loftus.
Good evening, Matt Loftus, 835 River Street, and SFT representative. I'm here first to make a request of the board, and it's obvious tonight that you're discussing seriously making some changes in the district for the better. And one of the things that I want to ask is that last time we were here, the budget went through for 2018-19, and it included what was cited to be 51 furloughs. And I ask that the board do everything in your power between now and the start of the school year to eliminate those furloughs. The students in this district need and deserve all of the programs that we currently offer, and we need them to run at full capacity. I do want to thank the board for agreeing to work with the SFT to try to address the per pupil state funding issue and the deficiencies that exist. We're eager to start work on that as soon as possible, and we think that could in part be a remedy to some of the problems we're experiencing. Another issue that we're having is that at this point, even though the number of 51 furloughs is being discussed, we still have 98 teachers with furlough notices in hand. And those employees, very dedicated employees, feel like they need to make some decisions about their employment, their lives, and they don't know who they are at this point. And it's very frustrating to them, and we're getting a lot of calls at the SFT office asking when the district is going to notify, if it's not 98, if it's only 51, when are they going to be notified of their status for next year. Job opportunities are opening all the time. And although they would all love to stay here and teach our students, if they are being furloughed, they do need to know that. Adding to that confusion, the last paycheck that was issued, on the back of the paycheck, it said that all employees, including the 98 with furlough notices, received notification that they had reasonable assurance that they would be back next year in the same capacity or a similar capacity. Many people, being new employees, had never seen that statement before and thought that the board had reversed their decision. And so we got a number of phone calls about that. The last two things that I wanted to mention, and from the PFM report, for years I've sat here with Rosemary and other executive committee members, and we've had to plead to various boards for more nurses and school psychologists and guidance counselors. There was discussion last time about the CTC needing another counselor, and there are students. But I see recommendations to hire more mid-level administrative staff. It doesn't make sense to me that we're laying off teachers. I'm sure those departments can use extra help. They have difficult jobs. But to lay off teachers and then hire mid-level administrative staff does not make sense. The final comment that I would like to make is purely my own as a taxpayer. Through the years, I voted in every election since I became eligible. And when I cast a vote for an elected official, I do hope that if they see something wrong, whether it be the school district or the city, that they would take an active approach in fixing it. I don't see that the board should have less involvement, and as a taxpayer and citizen, I certainly value a high level involvement by all board members. Excuse me, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Office. Ronnie Olson.
I'm short, so I apologize. I don't have anything scripted. I prefer to speak genuinely and not robotically, so that what I'm saying, you're more engaged in wanting to listen. So I am not only a graduate of this district, I am a taxpayer, a parent, and a teacher. Reading the paper recently has motivated me to come out on behalf of parents, because I don't think parents realize they do have a voice. I am here asking the board to have a voice that we in the public so desperately will pretend like we do by talking amongst ourselves, but no one's here actually doing it. So I read these articles in the paper, and it's disheartening. I believe in the district, I'm vested in this district. My daughter is probably one of the top students in 7th grade at Northeast. And I'm worried about her education and about the program she's going to be afforded to, because she is smarter. She doesn't, like the after-school programs, all of that's wonderful, but she doesn't need that. What about enrichment programs? We need more as teachers, and you just keep taking from us, and more importantly, the kids, the students. Like, my daughter, she's like, why isn't there going to be sports next year, Mom? I said, well, Lainey might be playing, within the city against South and whatnot, and it's not right. I'm asking the board up there today to get your voice, and it was, as an observer, clear on, the number that might agree with that voice and disagree, because a certain number of you sat and stayed, while a certain number of you got up and left. And that speaks volume as an observer in the crowd. It really does. And it kind of then makes me think, are the kids your best interest? Honestly, my daughter's coming home, so-and-so's moving, and so-and-so's gonna go to another district. So we're gonna be losing some of our brightest, best kids. But I, as contrary to popular belief, I cannot afford on a teacher's salary to send my daughter to a private school or to prep. I can't. And I think some of these families do have that ability, and we're gonna be losing some of the best, brightest kids that this district has to offer. It's gonna happen. And that scares me. So I'm here tonight asking for the board, from a parent and a taxpayer, My taxes, my mother passed away 13 years ago and my taxes have doubled in 13 years. I'm just asking for you guys to care and really not be afraid to stand up for what's right, please. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go through the public comment. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 25th and February 5th.
So moved.
I don't know, do we have copies of the meeting minutes?
I don't have them. But they were in our packets, right?
I have the 5th one right here, and January was
Okay. January was in the email, and the 5th was in our packet. Right. Right. On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes, sorry.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Director Casey?
Thank you. To the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Athletics and Stadium Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the University of Scranton and the Scranton School District have developed a field agreement partnership for the usage of Scranton Memorial Stadium and the newly developed Southside Complex. And whereas the University of Scranton will use Scranton Memorial Stadium for track and field practices. And whereas the Scranton School District will use the newly developed Southside Complex for daily practices and as many games that are allowable by the West Scranton varsity/junior varsity baseball team. Now, therefore, be it resolved, field agreement between the University of Scranton and the Scranton School District to be approved. Respectfully submitted.
You need a second?
Second.
On the question?
On the question, has anything changed from the last time when we voted?
No, Mr. Gentileza did approach the University of Scranton about, assisting us with, financially with resurfacing the field. They said that they would assist us in finding the best price possible when we had to resurface the track. I'm sorry, I misspoke, I said field. But that, this was really just an exchange of, mutually beneficial exchange of fields so that we could use their ball field for games and practices, and they could use our track for practices and so on. I don't think, even for meets, the track, I think their meets are away. So, that is the deal that they're willing to accept. We did approach them per your request, Mr.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
John, didn't the university say that when they did acquire that city property, that they would make it available to the public?
That's true, and I think they are building basketball courts and tennis courts, and they are making it available to our school students to play games and practice there.
Okay, so would that include the baseball fields?
You know, Mr. Lesh, so many years ago, I'm not certain. I'd have to look.
The only reason I ask is, we extend a hand out to the University of Scranton for some help. Okay, we get no taxes from the University of Scranton. No financial assistance whatsoever. And, I just feel it's a little difficult that they won't help us with some of our needs, and they're doing us a big favor.
Well,
or something that they agreed to when they purchased, when they purchased the land.
I can tell you that, from the perspective of our baseball program, I think Mr. Gentileza could probably answer this better than I could, but I think that the kids are excited to be able to play in that new facility there and to practice there. So there's a benefit for our children, and it's a mutual benefit. Again, I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Lesh.
You know, after discussions with Mr. Gianalese, we do need to realize that the track has been in use since when I was in high school. So I understand, looking in hindsight, to ask them to come in now after, you know, years of wear and tear on that, to ask them to pay, I get is a little premature or unrealistic. But I think that going forward, if they can help us get a discounted rate as to whenever that is to be resurfaced or whatever the plan would be, I think that it's a huge step forward.
And the contract, again, is only for a year.
And it's only for 1 year.
Anyone else? Roll call.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin? Yes. Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Athletics and Stadium Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the West Scranton Little League and the Scranton School District, West Scranton High School, West Scranton High varsity and junior high baseball teams, and West Scranton junior varsity, junior high softball teams have developed a field agreement partnership for the usage of a city-owned Sloan baseball, softball complex, and Battaglia Collie baseball complex games and practices for a 3-year term. And whereas the time period of the field agreement between West Scranton Little League and the Scranton School District shall commence on April 15th, 2018 and end on April 14th, 2021. And whereas the Scranton School District will act as the primary and the secondary tenants pursuant to the following schedule. From April 15th commencing this year, 2018, through the year 2020 and ending June 15th, 2018, each year through 2020, Scranton School District shall serve as the primary tenant and West Scranton Little League shall serve as the secondary tenant. From June 15th, commencing this year, 2018, through the year 2020, and ending September 15th, 2018, each year through 2020, West Scranton Little League shall serve as the primary tenant, and the Scranton School District shall serve as the secondary tenant. And whereas during the periods of primary tenancy, and the primary tenant shall use the premises at its election. During the periods of secondary tenancy, the secondary tenant shall be permitted to use the premises when not in use by the primary tenant and upon mutual agreement between the tenants. And whereas during the period of primary tenancy, the primary tenant shall pay all rents and charges for any utility services furnished for use upon or in connection with the premises, as the same shall be due during the continuance of this lease, and shall not be authorized to obligate the city for any charges for utility services or costs or expenses related to the utilities. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the field agreement between West Scranton Little League and the Scranton School District be approved. Respectfully submitted.
On the question?
We need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second. We have a second?
Second.
On the question?
On the question, yes, I just want to thank both parties, all three parties, to come into agreement. This has been controversial since the day we got on the board each year. The Little League, the school district, and the mayor's office, so I thank all parties involved for that.
Roll call?
My
Oh,
only
I'm
question is,
sorry.
the Little League was involved?
Absolutely. They were. We met with Jessica Rosgrad in her office, the city solicitor, and we worked through this, and I had several conversations with the gentleman, his name escapes me at the moment, he was the head of the West Scranton Little League, and it was went very well.
They were in full agreement?
Yes, I believe so. That's where we left it, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Director Schuster, I didn't hear you.
All right.
Roll call?
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin? Yes. Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
We have resolutions A3 through A5 recognizing the 3 Scranton High School wrestlers with a motion respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I just want to reiterate what I stated previously in the beginning of the meeting, that we will, next meeting, be honoring student athletes from West Scranton High School. just so that they're not forgotten.
Roll call?
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
That is all, President Dixon.
Thank you. Director Cognetti?
It is
Budget and Finance?
It is the recommendation of the superintendent and the Budget and Finance Committee that the following resolution be considered. The list of bill payments in accordance with the bill payment approval policy be approved as per the attached. I move that the orders be drawn upon the Treasury as follows. April 9th, 2018, $660,463.95. Respectfully submitted.
Second. Question?
On the question, I'd just like to state that I will be abstaining from the vote.
Roll call?
Mr. Lush?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Abstain?
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? 7 affirmative, 1 abstention, motion passes.
To the members of the Board of Directors of the Scranton School District of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Budget and Finance Committee that the following resolution be considered. The exception bill list as per the bill payment approval policy for the period ended April 9th, 2018, to be approved as per the attached. Respectfully submitted. Sorry, am I turning the page over? Exception bill list be resolved that the exception payments in the amount of $3,443,886.93 have been paid in accordance with the approval payment policy. Be it resolved that the payrolls amounting to $7,930,343.39 have been paid in accordance with the approval for payment policy.
It's on the back side.
Yep.
Oh, it's on the back side.
Yeah, sorry, page 2. That's all.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
No.
Mrs. Dixon? 7 affirmative, 1 negative, motion passes. I just want to say, for B1, it was 6 affirmative, 1 abstention, 1 negative. Thank you.
We're on to B3. To the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent of Schools, and the Budget and Finance Committee present the following resolution for your consideration. Be resolved that the delinquent tax report for the month of February 2018 be accepted. A copy of the monthly details available for review in the business office. The net to district is $395,430.02. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
8 affirmative, 1 negative, motion passes.
B4, to the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent of Schools and Budget and Finance Committee present the following resolution for your consideration. Be it resolved that the Treasurer's report for the period ending February 2018 be accepted as follows. The balance in the general account being $30,518,298.76. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
B5, to the members of the Board of Directors, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Budget and Finance Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas in accordance with real estate tax law, any property not sold in judicial sale shall be listed in a repository of unsold properties. The following properties have been sold and will be returned to a tax-paying status with the Tax Claim Bureau: 825 East Elm Street, 205 through 7 Donnelly Court, 1303 Stetson Avenue. Therefore, be it resolved that the school district of the city of Scranton does hereby approve the above referenced properties for repository sale pursuant to the real estate tax sales law and section 627 of said act. This resolution is subject to the approval of other taxing bodies. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin? Yes. Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
B6, to the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Budget and Finance Committee that the following is approved. Whereas Act 327505B requires bodies of school districts, townships, boroughs, and cities to appoint voting delegates and one or more alternate delegates to serve as their tax collection committee or TCC representatives. And whereas the Scranton School Board wishes to appoint Tom Schuster as the primary delegate, and whereas the Scranton School Board hereby appoints Paige Cognetti as the new first alternate delegate, and whereas the Scranton School Board wishes to appoint Pat Laffey as the second alternate delegate, therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board hereby appoints Tom Schuster as primary delegate, Paige Cognetti as the first alternate delegate, and Pat Laffey as the second alternate delegate to the TCC, and they are hereby authorized to vote on behalf of the SSD. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin? Yes. Mr. Lush?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
8 affirmative, 1 negative, motion passes.
So this would be Technology Committee, Mrs. Oleski.
Wait, do you have a B7?
No, we pulled that.
B7 was.
Oh, okay, okay. Technology, Director Lush?
Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Technology Committee that the following is approved. Whereas Section 611 of the Federal Communications Act 47 U.S.C. 531 authorizes municipalities to require cable operators to set aside channel capacity for public access, educational, and government PEG programming. And whereas the current cable franchise agreement between the City of Scranton and Comcast requires Comcast to provide the City of Scranton with one educational channel and one governmental channel, collectively the EG channels. For the city's exclusive use to provide community programming related to educational and governmental activities, and whereas pursuant to Section 7.3 of the agreement, Comcast has agreed to provide the city with an EG capital grant to be used in support of the production of the program for the EG channels. And whereas the school district utilizes the city educational channel to cablecast local educational programming, and therefore be it resolved in consideration of the mutual promises contained hereon and intended to be legally bound, hereby the Scranton School Board of Directors agrees to disbursement and payment schedule and responsibilities per attached memorandum of understanding between the City of Scranton and the Scranton School District. So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, this is a piece of a grant that's paying for the broadcast of the meetings?
I believe so.
What it is, it's there's a franchise agreement that the city gets every year, because we picked up that channel, that educational channel that we have. They agreed to give us $30,000 as part of it. Yeah. So more or less is a grant from the city, I guess you could say.
That's great. Now, is this a grant they get every year?
I believe it's $30,000, and it's 30 days following the effective date of this MOU, and it's to be used for use in production of channel programming, and I think it's one time. The total is $200,000 that the city gets, so we're getting $30,000, 15% of that.
So yeah, I'd just like to make the comment that For the last 2 years, I've been mentioning getting these meetings on television, and I'm glad to see that it's finally occurring.
So will these be live?
Pardon me?
Aired live? These
Couldn't hear you.
meetings, will they be aired live or would they just be played on delay?
I don't, you'd have to ask Mr. Brazil that question. I know we've got some programming requirements. I don't know if they're live programming requirements or not. Okay. So that would have to be a question to ask Mr. Brazil.
And perhaps it needs to be directed to Mr. Brazil, but I do have a question about the programming requirements, because in the MOU from the city, it says it shall be a requirement that the school district produce and cablecast on the educational channel a minimum of 3 hours of locally produced, non-repetitive, and non-character generated community programming on a weekly basis.
Only when school is in session, though.
I'm sorry?
It's only when school is in session.
Oh, right, only when school is in session, but I believe that would be different than what's on the government channel, which would be our meetings. And I wouldn't want to see funding jeopardized.
Well, I think the meetings would comply with this as well. I do.
Do you think we have to be concerned that this says specifically the educational channel, not the government?
No, because the educational channel is the one that we have, Channel 21. That's
Right,
what
but
we're
our
looking
meetings
for.
are aired on Channel 19, which is the government channel.
Pardon me?
Our meetings are aired on Channel 19,
Yeah,
which is the government channel.
Well, you'd have to ask Mr. Brazil that, okay? I'm sorry. I'm not in a position to answer what programming is done, that's the other.
Thank you.
So what are you asking if we're
Is-
using up this time slot, is it taking away from broadcasting of the district's educational program?
My concern is, are we fulfilling our programming requirements on the educational channel? I think we can accept this grant graciously, but I think we need to make sure that we're not doing anything to jeopardize.
I do know that was a point of contention in the negotiations, and when I talked to Mr. Brazil, he felt that he could meet that program requirement without any problem.
Well,
Because one of the things was, we were very concerned, he was very concerned about meeting that requirement over the summer. That's why the language is in there about the school year.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I know we aired sporting events, specifically football. That wouldn't count in the education, correct? I'm hoping that was, yeah.
You'd have to ask Mr. Brazil.
Mr. Brazil.
You'd have to ask Mr. Brazil that.
Anyone else? Roll call?
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gutmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
C2, to the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton. The Superintendent of Schools and the Technology Committee presents the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School District is looking to achieve savings in all areas of its operations, whereas the district, along with PFM, our state-appointed technical assistant representative, have been reviewing the copying and printing costs of the district. And whereas the district's current lease contract for copying service will expire before the end of 2018, therefore be it resolved, the Scranton School Board of Directors authorize the administration to solicit RFPs for copying and printing consulting services to identify the copying and printing needs of the district, and also in the preparation of future copiers and printing bids proposal. I so move.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Ms. Gutmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Okay, the education, Director Cognetti, you want to flow into that?
D1, members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent, and the Education Committee request board approval of staff attendance to conferences and meetings for professional development relevant to their specific duties and responsibilities as per the attached. Board approval is contingent upon the required approval of all supervisors, principals, or administration. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
I just want to note that we've got a few things happening in State College in Philadelphia, and it looks like we got great grants for that. That really reduced our cost to almost, looks like less than 10%, so that's fantastic.
Anyone else? Roll call.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
D2, to the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and Education Committee that the following is approved. Whereas the Scranton School Board hereby adopts the attached revised 2017-2018 school calendar respectfully submitted.
On the question?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second.
Roll. On the question? Yeah.
This is for D2?
Yeah.
I thought it was D.
This is the 17th. Next year.
Roll call.
I guess.
No, it's the next.
Yeah, 1718 explains to you that we will be following the calendar that is set here to the end of the school year, as I addressed earlier in my comments, that we will graduate on time and school will, this school year will end June 15th. Okay? Then in D3,
So there was a excuse me, Doc.
Go
There was a
ahead.
motion to table on the second, so I think we should.
I will rescind my second.
which calendar are you talking
He rescinds the second.
Oh, D2. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Got it.
That's correct, right? Do we have to vote on that then? Or no?
Mr. Miller, as long as he rescinded his second, you were okay. Okay.
So we just,
You can vote on the original motion that was seconded by Mr. Duffy.
we have the original motion. On the question? Okay, roll call?
Right, sorry, this is on to table.
No,
This is to
we
vote on the
rescinded.
original resolution.
To vote on the resolution, correct? Am I
The
understanding?
original resolution.
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
D3, members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it's the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Education Committee of the Scranton School District that the attached school calendar for the 2018-19 and 2019-20 school year be approved. Respectfully submitted.
I make a motion to table this, right?
We'll second.
Second.
On the question.
On the question,
Make a motion to table.
make a motion to table. Second.
Second by Dr. Casey.
Roll call? On the question, anybody? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Okay, Director McAndrew?
Yes, members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Education, wrong one, Jesus, sorry. All right. I know you want. The Superintendent of Schools and the Food Service Committee present the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas it is the intent of the Scranton School District to offer and provide all students the opportunity to receive nutritious and well-balanced meals on a daily basis. And whereas the Scranton School District realizes the important role that nutritious and well-balanced meals play in student achievement. Therefore, be it resolved, beginning in the 2018-2019 school year, the Scranton School District will offer breakfast to all students when there is a 2-hour delay, respectively submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Okay, Director Duffy?
Yes, Madam President. Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Intergovernmental Committee that the following resolution is approved. Whereas the Scranton School District and the City of Scranton are willing to talk about the potential to share certain services, this effort may lead to increases in efficiencies, enhance intergovernmental relationships, and improve the quality of intergovernmental services. And whereas the Scranton School District has been placed on financial watch status pursuant to Act 141 of 2012, and whereas the district's technical advisor, PFM, recommends that the district make efforts to share services, costs, and expenses with other municipal bodies, and whereas to advance dialogue and ensure success of shared services, costs, and expenses, the Scranton School District and the City of Scranton have agreed to form a shared services committee to explore the possibility of shared services and opportunities. Whereas the Scranton School District Board of Education shall appoint up to 4 members to said committee, along with 2 members from the City of Scranton. And whereas this agreement will be for an initial term of 6 months and be reviewed by the entire board and PFM in an effort to examine effectiveness and to change board representatives. And whereas the board will establish a list of 5 to 10 most important items to speak about when at these committee meetings, and whereas the meetings will be on a bi-monthly basis and at a location and time to be agreed upon by both entities, and whereas the district representatives will invite administration, personnel, and or other government agencies to meetings of said committee to accomplish the above. And whereas the Scranton School Board Member Gil Martin will provide regular updates on the progress of said committee to the full Scranton School Board. And whereas any and all possible solutions to be presented to both the school board and our PFM administrative team to help ensure the idea or solution is viable. Now therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board approves the formation of the Shared Services Committee in cooperation with the Scranton City Council and hereby appoints Directors Katie Gilmartin and Director Paige Gebhardt-Cagnetti to represent the Scranton School Board for the first 6 months of said committee. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Director Gilmore?
Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Policy Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas it is the desire of the Scranton School District Board of Education to govern using best proven practices that serve in the best interest of Scranton School District students, employees, and the Scranton community. And now, therefore, be it resolved to form a strong, effective governing team and to interact collaboratively with the Superintendent, the Scranton School District Board of Education will engage PSBA to provide training on April 17th, 2018 from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at no cost to the district. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
To the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Policy, Legislative, and Federal Programs Committee that the following be approved. Be it resolved, in order to comply with the Pennsylvania Right to Know law, the Scranton School District officially names Robert Gentileza as the Right to Know officer beginning June 1st, 2018. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
Ms. Gilmartin, that is an error. You have an old copy of that.
I apologize.
Ms. Orr, it's earlier today, you sent out a corrected copy. Would you mind?
What is the
It's
date?
May.
May 1st.
May 1st,
2018.
Okay.
But I would like to comment on that.
Okay.
Mr. Brazil has moved up his date of departure from the school district. In that light, I need to speed up my distribution of his duties to different staff members at the central office. We had planned to move the open records first, and in light of his departure date, I have moved up my calendar to May 1st. So we will begin almost immediately transferring the records, as I had expressed before, reviewing the policy and processes, as I had discussed before, getting Mr. Gentilezza some formal training in this area, so he will be in place May 1st. Now, during that time, Mr. Brazil will still be with us and will be able to help with the transition if we foresee any issues all along the way. So I want to make that clear to the board as to why that calendar date has been moved up. And I want to be sure you all have that on your agenda.
Should we make a friendly amendment, vote on a friendly amendment to reflect that date?
Yes.
I'd like to make the motion to have the friendly amendment reflect May 1st.
Or you have the correct one?
I have the correct one, yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure, I'll have to check to see if I emailed it, I thought that I did.
I may have missed
But
it.
then I thought that it was going to be discussed.
May I also make another point, just in the interest of clarity? The policy refers to the open records officer, not right to know officer. So I think either this should reflect that, or we should revise the policy so that everything matches up.
That's a good point.
Whatever your pleasure, you can make a friendly amendment to the resolution.
I'll make a friendly resolution to change it to open records officer.
Thank you. So we're changing the amendment, the resolution.
The resolution, if it's up to the board, on a friendly amendment to change the language.
As well as May 1st.
As well as May
As well as May 1st.
Okay, do we have a second on this or no?
Second.
We have a second on the record. What on the question? Anything?
Okay, one other thing, do we need to also appoint an appeals officer?
Oh, what?
No.
Appeals officer?
So I think Mr. Schuster was referring to, so in the Pennsylvania Right to Know law under section 503, it says that an agency of the government shall designate an appeals officer. I think this is not something we can do tonight. Obviously, with Mr. Brazil moving up his retirement date and with Mr. Gentilezza already being consumed with many tasks, I think it's something we should discuss and work again, maybe with PSBA and other advisors to decide what we need to do there, because it is in the law, but...
Director Cognetti, can I just ask a question? I read that law too, and I'm interpreting that comes from the Right to Know office. Am I right?
It's appointed by the Office of Open Records, and if you look at 503 and then you look at it in conjunction with section 1102, 1102 tells you what the duties of the appeals officer are, and they're actually the hearing officer. So for example, the current appeal we have pending, there's been an appeals officer appointed by the Office of Open Records by the name of Attorney Higgins. I forget her first name, forgive me. So the appeals officer, it's a little confusing, I'll agree, the way you read it.
Yeah.
It looks as if we should have an appeals officer. But it does say Office of Open Records. You need to actually look at section 1102. And if you look at section 1102, it defines the duties of the appeals officer. So the appeals officer, he or she, sets the schedule for discovery, for the hearing date, etc. They'll take any evidence. They can actually set a hearing if they want to or not. It's discretionary with them, and then they actually adjudicate the decision. They're, in essence, the appeals officer is in essence a judge. So that's why the Office of Open Records appoints them. If you look at section 1102, it's pretty clear. So
Section 503 certainly makes it seem that every agency is supposed to have both rights to know, or open records and agency, but forgive me if I didn't get down to a level.
I read section 503. If you read it, it says the Office of Open Records appoints the appeals officer. And then if you look at 1102, you'll see what the appeals officer's duties are. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear in the code under 1102 if you take a look at it. So.
Roll call?
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Policy Committee that the following resolution be approved, whereas the following policies 906 and 918 have been revised by the Pennsylvania School Board Association. Policy 906, Public Complaint Procedures. Policy 918, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement. Whereas the following policies 827 have been revised by the Scranton School District Policy Committee. Policy 827, Conflict of Interest. Now therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board hereby approves revisions to policy numbers 906 and 918, recommended by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, and numbers 827, recommended by the Scranton School District Policy Committee. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Director Casey, Personnel.
To the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Personnel Committee that the attached list of appointments, assignments, resignations, rescinded positions, and leaves of absences be approved. Appointments are effective upon receipt of proper criminal records, immigration, and medical and child abuse reports. Salaries are in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements. Respectfully submitted.
Second? On the question? I second it.
Can I just say that this is an amended one from...
I can't hear you, Virginia. It's very difficult to hear.
This is an amended attachment to what the public has. I just want
Okay.
to make that clear.
On the question?
So on the question, we will be voting on the original unamended version. The original would have -1. Correct.
Anybody else? Roll call?
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
To the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Personnel Committee that the following is approved. Whereas employee NH has been subject to disciplinary violation and has failed to respond to 2 previous hearings, and whereas employee CL has been subject to disciplinary procedures on several occasions, and whereas employee PM has allowed his certification to become invalid, and therefore be it resolved, the Board of School Directors authorized NH, CL, and PM to be taken to Loudermill hearings, and that the solicitor and the chief human resource officer are to follow appropriate procedures. Respectfully submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
I'm going to abstain from this vote. I gave you the letter.
8 affirmative, 1 abstention, motion passes.
That is all at this time for personnel.
Buildings and Grounds, Director McCampbell.
Okay, members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is a recommendation of the Superintendent and the Building and Grounds Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Scranton School District always endeavors to maintain 2 comprehensive high schools in the district with like course offerings and equal enrollments. And whereas the Scranton School District makes every effort to ensure that overcrowding conditions do not exist at any of the schools in the district. And whereas the Scranton School District desires that all students attend school according to their designated attendance area. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Scranton School Board approve that the West Scranton High School be designated high school for all students who attend John F. Kennedy Elementary School and McNichols Plaza Elementary School, commencing in the 2018-2019 school year, respectively submitted.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I'd just like to say that I do 100% agree that the discrepancy between the two schools, the two high schools, needs to be resolved, and I'm in favor of moving students into West Scranton High School. But as far back as 2015, when the first presentation was presented to us from Davis Demographics, I asked questions about alternative boundaries to this, and I really feel I didn't get a sufficient answer. I feel that a company from Texas, California doesn't really know the district, so I'm just making my statements known.
I also have something on the question, and it actually is a question to Dr. Curian. I want to reiterate some of Tom's statements. I also agree that we have to equalize the populations of both of the high schools and maintain all the effectiveness and efficiencies that we have there. I think I will be in favor of this. However, I would ask Dr. Curian specifically if we could approve this, however, make it for the 2019-2020 school year. Reason I say that are twofold. I'd like to see if we could further investigate the opportunities to potentially work with the transportation issue that we may have from that school. And also, I've gone to, I believe I made every meeting that we had set up for the public comment. And the reiterated public comment was on the student side to give them an additional year to acclimate to the idea that they're going to be attending a different school, and to help the parents with regard to all the events that might be taking place in those areas, to give them an additional year to just acclimate to that. That was what had been said numerous times and at all the meetings by numerous people, and I was just wondering if that would be something that we could do with regard to the current situation that we have at Scranton High.
Okay, Mr. Duffy, I made the recommendation. At this point, it's up to the board to decide what you would like to do. I'm concerned about the safety issue at Scranton High School and the fact that I'll have one less administrator there. I am concerned about the class sizes there and would like to balance that out at Westside High. But the recommendation was based on several factors which you heard many times. So at this point, I've brought my recommendation to the board, and it's at your pleasure, however you would like to vote.
Before we vote, Doctor, I just want to make sure, as a former administrator, this is a big concern to me for the safety issues with the students. We're 50 away from max at Scranton High, correct?
Yes.
We're 50 students away from max at Scranton High, down one administrator. Is that correct? I just want to make sure before I vote.
Yes, that is correct.
So with the influx of students that we get over the summer into October, we could very much reach that max at the beginning of the school year. Is that your
There is a
assumption?
possibility.
Okay. I think we should vote and see what happens.
At this point, I'm not going to make a motion to do anything other than to vote on I just want to voice my concerns as well.
Right. My concern. Roll call?
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
7 affirmative, 2 negative, motion passes.
Right, Special Education Committee. To members of the Board of Directors, the Superintendent and Special Education Committee hereby recommend the following.
Wait a second, excuse me.
M2 here.
M2 has been pulled.
No, M2 is the billboard proposal.
Excuse me?
The billboard proposal.
Yeah, when was
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the different one here. Well, this is priority project, that's M2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah, there was a.
Do we have
right,
copies?
see here. Do we have two M2s?
No, the M2 from the capital improvement, Dr. Carrion had that, they pulled that.
Right, we
So-
asked to pull that, right?
Right, and then M2, I made M2 for the billboard,
Yeah.
and I thought that she would discuss that.
Do you have the right ones?
They have one M2.
I just did, what's the one that we don't have the correct one.
Tell me the number, Jenny.
M2.
Mr. McAndrew, I don't know if we even need to look at it. I'm going to make a motion that we table it since we just received it a few hours before the meeting.
I'll second that.
Second. There's a motion to table M2.
Is there anybody? Okay, on the question or no?
I'm sorry,
Okay,
who
roll
seconded
call.
it? Who seconded the table?
It's a motion to table, one second.
And who seconded?
I made a motion to table it. Mr. McAndrew and Mr. Schuster both second.
Mr. Casey?
Mrs. Orr, first, don't we have to read the at least resolution that we're going to table?
Yeah.
Is that the procedure?
Excuse me, it is a recommendation of the superintendent and the Building and Grounds Committee to approve the following resolution. Whereas on March 5th, 2018, a request for proposals was made requesting digital billboards near Scranton High and North Scranton Expressway and Providence Road. And whereas Time Shamrock Outdoor and King Outdoor responded. And whereas Time Shamrock Outdoor was the best bid for the Scranton Expressway, totaling $500,000 over 25 years as follows. 15 per year for years 1 to 5, 17 per year for years 6 to 10, 20,000 per year for 11 to 15, 22,500 per year for years 16 through 20, 25,000 per year for years 20 through 25. And whereas King Outdoor proposal was the best bid for Providence Road, totaling $187,500 over 15 years, as follows: 10,000 per year for year 1 through 5, 12,500 per year for years 6 through 10, 15,000 per year for years 11 through 15. And now therefore be resolved that the above resolution be approved, subject to zoning approval, PennDOT approval, site selection, and school district property and execution, of said contractors. Respectively submitted.
Second.
On the question?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this. We received it at 2:49 p.m. today.
Before I don't go one way or the other, I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're tabling and that we understand that this isn't to enter into the contract as I've been understood. And I was told that just to.
It's what?
It's not the action, it's entering into entering into it. And Mr. Noon is here to describe as to what is in front of us.
Yeah, could you explain to the board what this is?
Okay, we put out RFP, billboard companies.
Can you pick the mic up?
Sorry, could you introduce yourself?
We put out an RFP for billboard companies. We had several interested. We did site tours. We asked that they choose the location on the premises. We asked that they do not take away from any aesthetics or obstruct any views. Appropriate ads. We also asked for student involvement, which could highlight work and achievements of students. And this is all at no cost to us, so I think it's a win-win.
So what is this resolution actually about then? just to get the process going, or is it?
Right, the companies wanted to, instead of waiting a month, they wanted to move forward. The bids came in and we have the bid winners, and they wanted to speed up the process.
So there's no cost to us to move forward?
No, it would be a tentative approval because there has to be zoning and PennDOT approval.
It was my understanding that this was going to be a resolution for the companies to move to seek zoning approval, PennDOT approval, site
Correct.
selection.
Right.
And approved subject to zoning and to allow the companies to move to seek that approval seem like murky words to me.
Time Shamrock.
If I can explain that, when you go in for a zoning, variance.
Turn it more, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'll try to speak up. If you go in for a zoning approval or a zoning variance, you have to have standing, like a sales agreement if you're buying a house. So they would have to have approval. Now, we can put it off for a month. It was actually Time Shamrock that won the bid on the North Scranton Expressway that was anxious because there's an April 19th hearing. The bid only came in on Friday, and I reviewed it over the weekend, and that's the only reason that we brought it here. It'll just push the process back a month, so that you understand the reason why. And I don't care if you table it or not, but that's the reason why it was done in an expedited fashion.
Time Shamrock representatives are here if you have any further questions for them. Time Shamrock representatives are here if you have any further questions for them.
Do we have any questions?
I don't have not to be disrespectful to anyone from a company who's here, but when Mr. Menor, when you say they won the bid, no one on this board saw the other proposals, so I'm not sure why you determined who
Well,
won the bid.
there were 3 proposals, and correct me if I'm wrong, Virginia, they were sent out, correct? They were emailed to the board?
So, okay,
It's okay, if you
we
want
need
to
them
table it.
attached, the document
trying.
needs to be attached, we need all proposals attached.
I'm not trying to argue about it, I'm just trying to explain why it was expedited, that's all. And I understand your concerns and take time and review it. I don't have a problem with it, that's a board decision.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. Roll call?
So
Wait.
to clarify, is this a vote to table?
I made a motion to table.
Yeah, this is a vote
This is
to
a
table.
vote to table. All right, thank you.
Roll call?
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Director Schuster, the special ed, please.
To the members of the Board of Directors, the Superintendent and Special Education Committee hereby recommend the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the school district of the City of Scranton is subject of administration proceedings and civil suits wherein the appropriateness of the students' special education programs have been challenged or suits have been filed in the matters of JSLB-ER/ODR number 20135-17-18, MJ/ODR number 20247-17-18, and JG-ODR number 20233-17-18. And whereas the parties reached a settlement agreement in the matter upon the terms and conditions previously provided for your consideration, therefore be it resolved that the settlements as indicated above be approved upon the terms and conditions as described, and the superintendent and the directors of special education are hereby authorized to execute any and all documents necessary to consummate the matter. Respectfully submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lush?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey? Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Director Gilmartin, vocational tech.
Yes. Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and Vocational Education Committee that the following resolution be approved. Be it resolved that the budget of the Career Technology Center of Lackawanna County for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 be approved as attached. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, on the question, I'll be recusing myself as I'm an employee at the Career Technology Center. And I provided the board secretary with the letter.
Roll call?
Mr. Duffy?
I just have one question on the,
I'm sorry.
that's okay, 1612 continuing education LPN, what? That increased drastically from 17-18 to 18-19, from 473 to 860. I'm just wondering specifically what that entailed. I know there's no one from the Career Technology Center here to specifically answer that question. That's basically what the added class. Yes, added class. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call?
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Abstain.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
7 affirmative, 1 abstention, 1 negative. Motion passes.
Director Lesh, Transportation?
To the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent of Schools and the Transportation Committee presents the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School District is looking to achieve savings in all areas of its operations, and whereas the district, along with PFM, our state-appointed technical assistant representative, has been reviewing transportation operations of the district, and whereas the district and PFM feel that savings may be achievable through the use of specialized transportation software and consulting services to analyze the district's current transportation operation. Therefore, be it resolved, the Scranton School Board of Directors authorize the administration to solicit RFPs for transportation software and consulting services to analyze the district's current transportation operations and provide recommendations to achieve savings. I so move.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, on the question, I'd just like to say that a few years back, the district had, in earnest, done a lot to try to improve its transportation and cut its cost. I believe Solicitor Menor could elaborate on that a lot more, but I won't request that at this time. But I do appreciate PFM, and if they have anything more that we can do to help with the current transportation issues. And again, you know, I think there's been an offer on the table by the Naples Transportation to save us some money in the upcoming years, and I just would appeal to the board to maybe look into that in the future.
Anyone else? Roll call?
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
yes,
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
New business?
Yeah, I have something on the new business.
Oh, under new business?
Yes, I have something on the new business. To the members of the Board of Directors of the Scranton School District, as confirmed in an email from Carolyn M. Simpson, Deputy Director of Communications, Office of the Attorney General, although the office cannot confirm or deny the existence of any investigation, the public statement quoted in the Scranton Times Tribune is accurate. As stated by spokesman Joe Grace, no one with office no one with the Office of Attorney General told anyone in the Scranton School District not to respond to a right to know request or to not talk with the Scranton Times. We take this matter very seriously and have reviewed it carefully. As said previously, we cannot confirm or deny the existence of any criminal investigation. Mrs. Simpson states, any decision you and the board make regarding the right to know request submitted by the Scranton Times has no impact on our office and does not involve us in any way. That being said, I move to direct the administration to comply with all right to know requests concerning the former district fleet manager's billing and insurance payments. I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second. Second.
On the question?
Jack, can I go?
I do have a comment. This statement is correct, except that there's one omission. And the omission is the local office did advise that when there is an open investigation, there is an exception. And the exception is that the records do not have to be turned over. I have been working, I have written an email to the board explaining the timeline. I have also discussed this extensively with the board. I have been, seem to be directed by consensus that we hold the records until the appeals process goes through. However, I did state when I discussed this with the board, at any time the board as a whole directs me to turn over the records, I am happy to do it. I want to make that perfectly clear that I have not heard from the board since I heard by consensus, because there were no objections, to hold the records until the appeal process goes through. And I also had requested the board, if they wanted the records to be turned over, to ask me to do so, and it would be done right away. I just want to clarify that.
Do we have any kind of opinion on record from Attorney Menor on this?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that, you know, the exceptions exist. They're lawful exceptions. However, the board has the right to waive those exceptions. And, you know, I think that's what Director McAndrew's motion is for. Now, what concerns me, and what has always concerned me, and I think, Mark, I sent you an email on this, and it's a remote possibility. I'll admit it's a remote possibility. It's highly, highly unlikely. But what concerns me is that, you know, Section 5102A of the Criminal Code, if you impede an investigation or the administration of justice, that's an M2. You know, I don't know what these documents might do or how it might impact an investigation. I suspect that it probably wouldn't do that, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that and I didn't let you know about that. So, again, it's your decision, but I want to make sure that you make a fully informed decision.
I have one more question. I mean, this is something that happened way before all our time here. So to me, it really doesn't matter, but my concern is if we're on record that this could happen, are we jeopardizing ourselves to go against that? Are we opening ourselves up to a legal liability?
Again, what I'm saying to you is I think the possibility is remote and highly unlikely, but it's still a possibility. So that if we reveal these documents and it turns out that they somehow impede the investigation, I think the exact language is impedes the administration of justice, then yes, you know, if that's the case, yes.
So we can individually be prosecuted?
In theory, yes. I doubt it. It's highly unlikely.
People investigating we're saying that we're not interfering with the investigation if we release the information. That's good enough for me.
I'm sorry, Mark, what did they say? I'm just asking a question.
The email that we received said in no way that us releasing has no impact on the investigation. I mean, I don't care about Article 55-2 or Mr. Green in the conservatory with the candlestick. The AG's office, it was set.
It's Mr. Green from the local AG.
Yeah, I know what it is, but the email I got on Friday confirmed to me,
That is so inappropriate.
crystal clear, that we can release the information. So there's a motion on the table, just vote yes or no.
There's no question you can release the information. I think I said that. You know, what I wanted to do is just clear for the record what concerned me.
Yeah, I think what happened here is Mark made a motion, he moved on this, and you're stating if the board, as a consensus, moves to give this direction, then we're ready to go, so.
Do we have to write a resolution?
I just a motion to vote.
No, I would say that you just stated, and incorrectly, I might add, that there were no objections to us holding onto these documents until the appeal. It might be true that we were still discussing, but there was never a time where we discussed as a board to definitely hold and not make a decision until the appeals process was over. That is, at least from my perspective.
By lack of direction and lack of objection.
Well, we've had
I
two long weeks
interpreted
of,
that.
we've had 2
But
long weeks of
I've
discourse.
also said on many occasions, verbally, in email, again tonight, if it is the board's pleasure, the records will be released.
There's a motion.
Well, you know, just as Mrs. Cognetti said earlier, she didn't feel comfortable voting on, what did you think? What was that?
And the billboards proposal?
Right, because it was only presented to her.
Mr. Lush, we've been discussing this at length for 14 days, 15 days.
Can I finish? Please finish. All I'm saying is this has just been presented to us right now. Okay, I think it's very unfair, and I think Director McAndrew has sandbagged this board into making a decision, okay, which I think is very unfair and very unprofessional. All right? So I think this board needs to further discuss this matter, okay, before we come to any type of decision like this.
We have been discussing this at
Again,
length since
the
March 25th.
solicitor has given us a warning, okay, and I believe it's a valid warning. All right, there may, I'm not saying there will, but there may be some type of legal repercussion. So, you know.
It was also stated that it was remote and highly unlikely. I would go with that advice.
Well,
There's
you
a
know
motion
what?
on the table, let's just vote.
Let me tell you, there's a lot of lawyers in this country, and there's a lot of laws in this country, and there's a lot of courts. So,
Well, I'll just say this.
I'd be surprised.
I'll just say, you could invoke Robert's Rule 8, you can't do this, I mean,
No,
I'm not going to do that.
No, this satisfies Rule 8. I have the documentation.
Because it's been
we
written
have our own
documentation.
rules about
What I would say is I would have an argument for that. I'm not going to invoke the rule. However, if someone tells me, and the legal opinion of this solicitor is that this could possibly hinder an investigation that we asked for, I have serious reservations about that. That being said, I don't want to stop anyone from getting the information that they want to have or that the public is in need of getting. Is there any way that we could effectively move this process much faster forward than has been going through? In other words, we've had a right to know, it's been denied, and now there's an appeal. That can linger on for.
No, the decision will be made.
What is the process in the
April
appeal?
26th, the decision will be made by the Office of Open Records.
Well, even with that April 26th deadline, could we put something to move it forward up quicker than that 2 weeks?
I don't believe I can.
2.5 weeks?
That schedule was set by the appeals officer, so I don't believe so.
I would caution this. That's all I'm saying. April 26th, they give the green light, that's their business. Takes us out of the equation, any liability. Again, it's us that we requested the investigation. Why should we compromise something that we started?
Why should we be keeping public documents from the public? What purpose does that serve?
If the board decides to vote on this, I would like an amendment in this document, a friendly amendment, to say that I was advised by the local office not to release the records.
This isn't a formal vote, right, Mr. McNichols?
No, but this is a formal document, and that's all I'm asking. It could be a friendly amendment, you do it all the time.
I have to say, it's very difficult for me to be hearing everybody. I don't know if it's okay for me to abstain from this vote, being that I couldn't even hear very well what Mr. McAndrews' motion. I mean, it's very hard. Dr. Kurian, it's hard to hear you. Mr. Duffy, it was hard to hear you. And I abstained from this vote just because I wasn't able to hear everything.
Sure, I'm having difficulty hearing on stage.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I don't think this is the time to do this. I really don't. And I just believe that, you know,
There's a motion. Jenny, could you take roll call, please? There's a motion on the table.
Are we done
If you don't want to vote no, that's fine.
geez, are you in that much of a hurry?
We all are.
Who's we all?
All right, please.
Steve Bernicki.
You and him?
I'm just
Mr.
asking
Lush.
that the correction be made.
You haven't shut up all night.
Mr. Lush.
Dr. Kieran, I would say that there's a full package, the affidavit that Mr. Menorah and Mr. Brazil submitted to the Open Records Office. I would think we could attach that entire thing to this for the record.
Yeah, there
Maybe
is an
not through
affidavit
that.
included in that.
Pardon?
There is an affidavit included.
Right, that statement that you're saying is in there, I think.
All right.
Could attach that.
I would be
Now,
fine.
what happens if this is in the appeal process because the Open Records has a process that they go through and we overturn the decision? What happens then?
If you overturn the decision of denial, I think it becomes a moot point. I would just advise the hearing officer that we decide to release the records.
So we'll roll call?
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Can I abstain due to the fact that I wasn't able to hear the whole everything or no?
Okay, Carol.
Thank you. Because I don't want to make a judgment on something I really didn't hear too much of.
She can't hear it, and that's fair here and here.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Cognetti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
No.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
7 affirmative, 1 abstention, 1 negative, motion passes.
Mrs. Dixon, the records will be ready first thing tomorrow morning to be released.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we leave and adjourn, I just...
Mrs. Dixon, I have something that I need to bring up.
Oh, we're not done yet. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the board's patience in hearing this statement and those in the audience. In earlier comments this evening, bullying among our students, policies and programs that the district has in place to address this issue were mentioned. Also mentioned was a program being planned for parents to help them understand the problem, the programs our schools have in place, and ways parents can help. Unfortunately, bullying is also an adult problem. It is a serious problem and may result in legal action. Adult bullying may be planned or may be spontaneous and caused by insecurity, nerves, and stress. Feelings all of us are experiencing in the current state of our district. Everyone in this room witnessed a disappointing display of adult bullying from a small representation of our teachers who are expected to be role models for our students. Those teachers are urged to read the introduction of the CBA. In addition, there was display of bullying on this stage, which is clearly a violation of the leadership and governance policy passed by this board. Board members voted to abide by this policy. If the expectation is that staff and students follow policies and procedures, the expectation is that the board would do the same. Earlier, Matt Loftus spoke about us working together to advocate for additional state funding. We means the superintendent, the board, and the SFT, all of who pledged to do this. If we can accomplish this, the tensions that we are all feeling will be relieved. As the leader of this district, I am asking that we put personal feelings aside, abide by policy and procedure, and work together in the best interest of the students, taxpayers, the administrators, faculty, and staff of the Scranton community. Today I attended a meeting with chamber members and city officials, colleges, and universities, and we have support. The community is behind us. Let's do our part to demonstrate our ability to lead this district. Thank you for your patience and allowing me to express my concerns.
President Dixon, I'd like to say something. First of all, I'd like to offer my apologies for my behavior. I should be above the comments that were spoken and said here tonight by the audience, because I'm supposed to be a professional. I'm an elected official. Maybe I should act that way. But as the superintendent said, I will back her 100%. It is bullying in the worst way. And you're out there every day in front of your children. You're supposed to be an example. You're the one that sits in front of 25 students, maybe more. You don't act that way in the classroom. Why do you come here and act this way? This board faces a lot of unpopular, very difficult decisions. I know most of you people. I've lived here for the past 18, almost 19 years. And I've been good to you people for the past 18. Yeah, you can raise your eyebrows all you want, okay? That shows your ignorance. And you probably do the same thing to your children. Please, this is my time to speak.
Okay.
All right? Now, as far as me resigning from this board, that was another very difficult decision. But it was something I made and something I have to live with. And I made it for a reason. It concerned my family. I won't go into it, and I don't think it's anybody's business but my own. But it meant more. My family means more. I'm sorry. My kids hurt, I hurt, and vice versa. But again, I could say the disappointment that I feel towards some of the teachers in this audience tonight, sad. Sad for educated people, sad.
I'd like to finish and piggyback off of the last two speakers. As the board president, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the entire board over the hard work that we have done together since December 4th when I came on board. It's been a long 3, almost 4 months now, and we had a long process that we had to go through. Not only the board, Dr. Kirian, her senior staff, the administrators, the teachers, everybody, it was a group effort. These hard decisions that we had to make in the examination of our decision-making processes has given us the opportunity to seriously examine where this board is now and how we want to go forward. We have made some serious, difficult decisions and will face many more. However, tonight, as I sat here for the last 4 months, I have witnessed behaviors of adults, including board members, including audience. I'm a former administrator, I'm a former teacher, as I'm piggybacking off Mr. Lesh. There is absolutely no reason for anybody to scream out. If a kid ever did that in class, they be called out in the hallway, or they be called out on their behavior. I'm expecting this board to show a decorum as the governing body and to provide the leadership that we need. Most of the time, we're all voting the same way. We all want the same thing. We want transparency. We're asking questions. But there's no reason to do that disrespectfully, condescending, yelling at each other. I have asked, I've talked to Katie, we've reached out to PSBA, because it's the desire of this Scranton School Board of Education to govern using best practices so we can become a model board for this district. I've sat through many boards over the last 30 years, and this board needs to be different, but I'm hoping that we can be professional and respectful of each other. Thank you.
Excuse me. Can I ask one thing very quickly?
Sure.
My name is Michelle Petraeus.
Hi, Michelle.
My husband is one of the FCS teachers that's going to be furloughed. And this week, on Friday, this is his paycheck, and this is the letter that was received by him in his classroom that he sent to me. And on the back of it is the message that the district very mindlessly sends out at the end of each school year. And on it, it says, as we draw to the close of another school year, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for being with us throughout the school year, and I compliment you on the manner in which you perform your duties. You can accept this as reasonable assurance that you will return in a similar capacity in the fall term. Best wishes for a pleasant summer. He is being furloughed and he received that. So, while we're talking about respect and that you would all like our respect to you, this negates all of that in the careless manner in which you are treating these furloughed teachers. I do not understand why this was sent out to the 98 people who received a letter of furlough intent. My husband's one of the 28 tenured teachers, so you do not intend to do anything. You are going to follow through with it. And I appreciate that. As a taxpayer, I understand that you have difficult decisions to make. But as a spouse of someone who is going through this, please give them the respect. He has worked for this district for 10 years. And you aren't answering any questions. The union's not helping him in any way, shape, or form. They are leading him on, believing that he may be called back sometime in the future. Give him some respect. This was absolutely ridiculous. So, on behalf of everyone who received this, shame on you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'd just like to say, I apologize deeply that went out. I don't know who made that.
Do we have a reason for that?
Just wanted to
No, it goes on
apologize.
every check every year.
I know that,
They do it
Michelle.
all the time, but
I know that.
How
did this happen?
You'd have to ask payroll. It went out on the back of the check.
Where are they now? I mean, that really, that seems like an inexcusable oversight, and I agree, I apologize.
I agree.
Okay, motion to adjourn?